Hi guys, you're listening to the Jet Rail Podcast. I am your host, Jill Treese, and this episode is going to be a little bit different than usual, so if you're new to the podcast, I apologize. This might be a little bit off for you, but there has been a video and some posts and some comments that I kind of want to address regarding Season 2, Episode 30 and 31 on dominance theory. I talked about Join Up as kind of an offshoot on dominance theory and an individual who I am choosing to leave anonymous because I know how the internet works and I don't want people that enjoy what I do to feel defensive on my behalf. So after I read these comments, I have screenshots of them and I'm sure they do too, but I'm going to delete the comments to protect their privacy and so that nobody goes after them. And I mean, they posted a video to YouTube and made a post on their own account and I can't do anything about that. So should you find them, that is your own prerogative, but I would really encourage you not to spread any hateful messages towards this individual. But I do have a rebuttal because a lot of what they said I found offensive to me personally. There was a lot of mocking and I get it. I get where you're coming from with it. But I have a lot of things that I have to say. I have some notes in front of me and I just think we should get into it. So here we go. So the last ad before we jump into the content is one where you can support me and the horses directly. If you're willing and able, check us out at Jet Rail Podcast on your Patreon app or at patreon.com/JetRailPodcast. When you become a patron of the podcast, you can ask me questions that I'll answer on the podcast, receive merch, and have access to live Q&A events, which means you get your questions answered in real time. At the higher tiers, you have the option for phone call consults with me on air or privately, as well as access to online training with me, depending on your tier. Ooh, fun. Lastly, should you decide to become a patron, just know you can cancel at any time and subscribe and unsubscribe as you please. And if you can't support us through Patreon, absolutely no worries at all. Listening alone is more than enough. And I just want to say thank you to all the current and future patrons. Me and the ponies appreciate it endlessly. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking and we're going to get into the part where I talk about things you're interested in. Okay, so I have a lot of notes and a lot of content, so this is probably going to be one of our longer episodes because, I have like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 pages of notes, and I'm going to try and rock and roll through these best I can. But I want to start off by reading you her Instagram caption and YouTube video caption. They're the same. So they write, a lot of what Jet Rail Podcast, Debunking Dominance Theory podcast said in regards to licking and chewing and Monty Roberts' join-up method are downright false and in fact not quote-unquote backed by science. Jet EquiTheory states that when a horse licks and chews it is because it is coming out of a stressful experience and back down into the parasympathetic nervous system. I have a doctorate in anesthesia and we are experts on the autonomic nervous system. I can thoroughly explain why licking and chewing has nothing to do with the parasympathetic system. She also degrades the use of Monty Roberts' join-up method, calling it expletives, I called it bullshit, and emotional abuse to the horse. It is not dominance theory, period. I will also thoroughly explain why. I will explain why her references are not really backed by science. They are invalid studies that are extremely biased, have very small sample sizes, and do not follow the scientific method for research. The actual studies even say that it is important to acknowledge the restrictions contained in it. I am tired of negative reinforcement style that is done in an ethical way be passive-aggressively called unethical and shamed to a rather large and impressionable audience. Licking and chewing is a good sign in horses, and after this video you will know exactly why. You shouldn't have to question if you are distressing your horse when you are stressing your horse out when you are doing other ethical forms of training. I encourage you to watch some of Monty Roberts' videos for yourself and do your due diligence studying both sides of any argument. Don't blindly take a popular social media influencer's word for it, even if her intentions are for the betterment of the horse. It is also very obvious she did not thoroughly study the other side. I will explain why in the video. I think she has burned a big bridge with somebody who could have been a great ally with similar interests in bettering the equestrian industry with cruelty-free methods of training. So, you can understand why I'm kind of wanting to say my piece on it. And, like, look, I wasn't totally expecting everyone to be on board when I said dominance theory and join up are not things that we should use in training anymore. And I definitely know that I have a tendency to get heated, and in those episodes, they were long. And while it's not necessarily a justification or at all, I definitely got tired and stopped holding my tongue and probably said some rather offensive things if this is your, a way that you really enjoy to train and or a person that you really respect. And for that, I apologize. That was not my intent. I have never wanted to shame a person for the things that they do with their horses. My podcast stands to help people learn more and embrace the new information, and that there are alternative ways of doing things and that we don't have to do what we've always done. It's called the most dangerous phrase in the English dictionary for a reason. So, I mean, I'm not trying to shame anyone into agreeing with me, but I do have an opinion, and there's a reason for it. And I get into that a little bit more in a minute. But I want to break down her video. It's 40 minutes long. If you do happen across it, you are more than welcome to watch it. But I took a lot of quotes and notes as well. I watched the whole thing, and I have a lot to say. So I'm going to go ahead and get into this. It's very hard for me not to say anything while I'm reading the video caption, because I have a lot of thoughts. Okay, so in her video, she starts by saying that she has no issue with me and that she likes my personality, which is nice. I appreciate that. But she goes on to say, what I do not like is the constant passive-aggressive shaming of people who use negative reinforcement or the join-up method. Now, first, I want to say that I have a degree in psychology, and passive aggression is not what you think it is. Most people think passive aggression is pretty much just anything that's not deliberately like, you look ugly, like it's not a straight-up insult, but it's kind of the beating around the bush version. That's how we use it, but by definition, it means of or denoting a type of behavior or personality characterized by indirect resistance to the demands of others and an avoidance of direct confrontation, as in procrastinating, pouting, or misplacing important materials. So, the best way for you to learn about what passive-aggressive actually is to listen to the Psychology in Seattle podcast. Kirk Honda does a multiple-hour deep dive into the personality disorder associated with it and why it got taken out of the DSM, what it means, and that definition is actually pretty accurate, and you can literally look it up on Google. It does, like, me saying that join up is bullshit is aggressive, and it's intentional because I disagree with it. And it's not that I hate Monty Roberts or I think he's a bad person or anything like that. I mean, she says multiple times in her video to back her claim that he doesn't use whips and he's actually advocating against it. That's great. Love that. Don't love join up. It's like I can agree with or disagree with a part of him, but I don't hate him as a person. He seems like a lovely man who's trying to do awesome things for the horses, but I just don't agree with his method. And I don't know. It's frustrating. So being passive-aggressive is the indirect resistance and avoiding confrontation. Me saying that dominance theory is debunked is being confrontational intentionally. Now, I am not a confrontational person, and I will tell you that recording this episode, I did not sleep at all last night when I saw the comments on my post, and I have been very stressed out since, and I have been taking notes and working on this literally all day because I hate it, and I just... it stresses me out really bad, so I put that stress into trying to get this done, so I don't have to deal with it anymore. But my point is I'm not being passive-aggressive. I'm being deliberately aggressive. If I were being passive-aggressive, I would just not use negative reinforcement when people tell me to. So anyway, another thing is that she says I'm passive-aggressively shaming people who use negative reinforcement or do join up. The goal is not to shame people. If you feel shame when I am telling you why I think that join up is wrong, I'm sure I haven't, in full disclosure, I have not re-listened to the episode. I didn't have time to do that today, and I wanted to get this up. But I don't think I said you are a bad person, you are deliberately abusing your horse, or you are choosing to ignore science if you continue to use join up. I believe I said if you still train this way, that's okay. You can now make an informed decision. And I also use negative reinforcement to to say that I am passive aggressively shaming people who use it doesn't really add up to me, because I rode yesterday and used negative reinforcement. I don't have an issue with negative reinforcement. Do I have an issue with its frequent and most common implementation? Yes, because I don't think it's necessary for it to be the first course of action in training, but many people do. And beyond that, those two things are not mutually exclusive. Negative reinforcement and join up are not one and the same. Join up is a technique that a lot of people use who also happen to train with negative reinforcement, but that doesn't mean if you train with negative reinforcement you use join up. They're not one and the same. So I can't, it frustrates me, because I'm not attacking Monty Roberts. Am I attacking the method? Yes. And also there's a difference between what Monty Roberts, the professional, does and what people who use his training do. And I talk more about that in a little bit. But it's also important to notice that I cannot talk about positive reinforcement and why it is my predominant choice for training without saying why I don't use negative reinforcement. The difference is that most people who ride or interact with horses use negative reinforcement. It is the most common form of training, so it doesn't often get run up against. When I say why I use positive reinforcement, I usually have to provide some reasoning, and usually that reasoning entails why I don't use negative reinforcement. So yes, I'm going to say that it's not my favorite way to train, because it's not. That doesn't mean I hate the people who use it or I think they're deliberately abusing their horses. No, I think that it sometimes stems from something that grows into that, but only in certain people. Most people that work with horses absolutely love them and really want the best for them. But unfortunately, the only material we're ever provided is word of mouth from traditional trainers. And most people end up doing that without realizing there's another option. And the thing is, I am here to provide knowledge, and I am sorry if I am passionate about it and it comes across in a way that I'm not intending, or if I do it intentionally and it just doesn't work out, or it offends somebody. That's not my goal. I never want people to feel bad or guilty about how they interact with their horses, unless, they deserve it because they're doing it on purpose. But I don't think most people are. I have faith in horse people, and I believe that generally that's not the goal. I think that a lot of things happen, a lot of bad things happen in traditional type training, but I don't think that the people that do it are inherently bad. And even if they are, that doesn't mean I hate them as a person or I think that overall they're a bad person. It just means I don't agree with their actions. I have a lot of people like that in my life. I have a lot of friends who ride with negative reinforcement, and they would go behind my back probably saying that what I do is bullshit. But when they say it to my face, it comes out a lot nicer. A lot of people I know just don't do what I do. Why? Because they think their way is better. They just don't have to say it because it's the most common, way of training. So anyway, that is my spiel on that. But it is a double standard because one is more popular than the other. So one hardly ever has to defend itself or explain why. But it's usually unsaid that it's like, okay, you're doing your positive reinforcement thing, whatever floats your boat. But I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing. And if you said why, and they'd be like, well, because it works. Well, have you tried positive reinforcement? No. Why? Eventually you would get to, I don't want to. I'm sure there are other explanations, but usually people, they don't have that conversation. It's just understood, and I'm not forcing anybody into positive reinforcement or trying to guilt or shame people. I think there was a point when I first started that my own guilt was projecting out, and then I was, trying to guilt other people into agreeing with me. But I really think I have grown past that. But, send me a quote from the podcast and give me a timestamp, and I will talk about that because I really don't think I'm coming from that place anymore. Okay, so anyway, she says I called join up bullshit and dominance theory, which she disagrees with. She agrees with Monty Roberts that join up is useful and that it is not dominance theory. I disagree. I stand by what I said. I don't agree with join up. Obviously, calling it bullshit is not the most, intelligent, eloquent way to say that. But for the sake of entertainment, that's what I said. So she explains that she has a doctorate in anesthesia and that licking and chewing is not a sign that the horse is coming off the sympathetic nervous system. So if you don't know, the sympathetic nervous system is the fight or flight, and then parasympathetic is your resting state. They call it rest and digest. And when you get really excited or scared and there's a lot of adrenaline, you usually kick up into sympathetic. She goes on to say that it works without a choice and it sort of happens at the drop of a hat, but the parasympathetic system doesn't do that, which is frustrating because that's not what I said. So, and like I can appreciate that she has a doctorate in anesthesia. That is incredibly hard to do, and it is wildly impressive. Geez, that's the word. But that doesn't mean that other people can't acquire that information. I have also studied the autonomic nervous system, and I am in a profession, in a field where I have taken psychopharm classes. I know these things as well. I know about neurotransmitters and hormones and how they affect the body. But I'm obviously not on her level, so she would be more of an authority on that than me. However, being an authority on it with people is a little bit different than horses, and also there was some things that she said in her video that seemed either like a misunderstanding or like she was misconstruing what I was saying, so I want to talk about that a little bit. So her main argument was that sympathetic kicks at the drop of a hat and parasympathetic doesn't. But that it is gradual, so the horse gradually starts salivation as he relaxes from the pressure or the fear-inducing stimulus is removed. That's what I meant. I don't know if that came across in the podcast. Again, I really don't know what I said. But from my understanding, especially being a rider, I'll give you a personal example. Going cross-country, every time I got put into the start box, my mouth would go insanely dry. It's currently quite dry because I hate confrontation, and this is making me very anxious. Even though there's the person that I'm arguing with is not here. This is not my forte. But going into the start box, my mouth would immediately dry up because my adrenaline kicked in and I was ready to go. And another term in the same realm as adrenaline is norepinephrine, which she talks about in her video. And so when I ride, that happens. It helps me focus and pay attention to what I'm doing. It gives me the energy. So if maybe my body would get tired otherwise, it won't in that scenario. But then when I come off of cross country, my mouth is still dry. But as I settle down, it starts to go back to normal. I don't think I said that the second the horse shifts from sympathetic to parasympathetic, that it is like instantly they start salivating and then they have to lick and chew. If I did, that's not what I meant to convey. It's more like when you start shifting down gradually, those other organs in your body, the digestive tract starts to slowly start working again, and you return to or begin your descent to homeostasis. And that is where you get the licking and chewing. Beyond that, it is a calming signal, which also she has an issue with. So I'll get to that in a second. She says that my theory as to why horses lick and chew is because there's a surge of acetylcholine. So I simplified this because most people don't know about neurotransmitters. Most of you, when I said acetylcholine, were like, what? What is that? It's a neurotransmitter. And so I apologize if my podcast lacked some nuance. I didn't feel like going in depth, and nor is that really my field of expertise, is listing all the neurotransmitters that kick on and off when you go into or in between the autonomic nervous system systems. So I did not include that, but I made it easier to understand for listeners, and that way it's a little bit less like, hey, this neurotransmitter does this and blah, 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 blah. So, and that's not what she said. I mean, she said it very eloquently, but I did not want to get into that. So she says horses are unlike dogs. When they smell something, they get a surge of, salivation. And I think that that's not how I was talking about it. I did not say that it's like it just kicks on in the same way that when you hear something that sounds really good, or you smell it and you're like, oh my God, yeah, I would like that food, and your mouth immediately starts watering. That happens for me with sour things. That's not what I said. Also, that is not the same context at all. One is salivating out of desire, and another is salivating out of transition into a relaxed state. Context matters, and that is an important theme throughout this entire podcast episode, because a lot of the evidence that this individual uses to back her claims ignore context, and it is strictly looking at the behavior. But I implore you to consider the circumstances under which you smile. Do you smile when you're happy? Do you smile when you're anxious? Do you smile when you're uncomfortable around somebody, but you want them to, be nice to you, so you smile at them? I don't know when my computer just all of a sudden decided to make sound. I apologize. But you smile and you use the same behavior under a wide variety of circumstances, one of which could be considered a calming signal. So if somebody's making you uncomfortable, like for instance, for me, when I go into a gas station and the cashier's there and they have this dead expression in their eyes, it makes me uncomfortable. And so I try to alleviate some of the tension between us, because sometimes people, especially in that industry, which I cannot blame them, and I would likely be the same way if I were working at a gas station, that they just kind of look at you like you are bothering them and don't say a whole lot. So I normally smile to try to, it's not really even a cognizant thing that we do. It's more instinctive, that you're like, okay, look, I'm nice. You can be nice to me. I'm not going to, make your day harder. That is a calming signal. You're asking the other person to go easy on you. You're alerting them that you are not a threat, etc. That is not the same behavior. It does not have the same underlying emotions and context as smiling because you're laughing with your friends. Two very different situations. So anyway, comparing that the surge of salivation is like saying that my side is saying that the surge of salivation is like that of a dog salivating over food is not a one-to-one comparison and not fair. Like, that's not what I said. Also, just realized that my mic is facing the wrong direction. Sorry, fixed it. Okay, so beyond that, she claims that Rachel Drysma is not qualified to speak on the topic. If you don't know, she's the author of Language Signs and Calming Signals of Horses, Recognition and Application. I have the book in front of me, ATM. So, in her video, she says that she doesn't have any of the qualifications or a degree on the subject matter, which is arguable because we are debating over equine behavior, and she is using her degree as leverage, being an anesthesiologist, which is great, and I'm sure she has some background on the neurotransmitters and autonomic nervous system, but to argue that someone who did a small study, yes, horse studies are usually underfunded because nobody cares, because traditional training quote-unquote works, and the focus, or I guess objective, is different. But to say that somebody who has put forth at least a toe into researching is unqualified because they don't have a degree in something that nobody has studied yet is a little bit of like pot calling kettle black when you're somebody who has a degree that is irrelevant to the subject matter on which you are arguing. And I'm not saying that her opinion is totally irrelevant, by the way. I'm just saying, like, it seems a little bit odd that, but fine. I get it, because I'm using Raquel Drysma's study as evidence for why I believe what I believe. But I want to clarify that in her video, she talks about how Rachel Drysma, I keep saying Raquel because that's how I learned it the first time, but I re-listened to a podcast episode on Come Along for the Ride with her just to make sure that I had my facts straight, and because God knows I don't want to get them wrong on this. Anyway, they call her Rachel, so it might be Raquel, it might be Rachel, I don't know. She's Dutch, so... but her title is DRS, which stands for Doctorandus, which literally means one who is qualified to proceed for the title of doctor. Since 1986, a Doctorandus has been entitled to use the title Master, abbreviated to MA, written after the name. So, essentially the American equivalent of Masters. So, anyway, she, in her video, says that Rachel Drysma has this abbreviation in front of her name. She's like, I don't know what it means, but she seems to have like a bachelor's in writing or literature and language or something. And which is like, it took me one whole Google to figure out what DRS stood for. So again, it's just frustrating that there are so many instances where they're calling me out for not doing my due diligence when the same thing is happening on the other side. So fine. But anyway, so Raquel Dreisma started in 2002, got her diploma first to be a trainer for dogs, and then became a certified behaviorist. That is wildly important. Yeah, she has her master's in language and literature, or I guess the equivalent of a master's, which the individual in the video said was a bachelor's. But she has the equivalent of a master's in that field. But if you listen to the Come Along for the Ride podcast, she discusses her history and says that she started dog training and became a behaviorist when she decided to make a career switch. So she was originally in language and now she's training dogs. She became a certified behaviorist. She is qualified to speak on the topic. It was on dogs, but then she did the research so that she could move into horses. So anyway, in 2003, she started her own business working as a trainer and behaviorist for dogs. She began using calming signals of dogs, which was some research done by Turid, last name Rugas, ? My point here is most trainers don't have degrees, but that doesn't mean you can't become an authority on the subject. If the subject hasn't been invented yet, how on earth would you be an authority or take classes on it? You can't take a class in an equitation or an equine science class over calming signals and language signs because nobody's done it yet except for Raquel Dreisma. Like, okay, I mean, I guess people can't do their own studies independent of organization, but fine. So the individual in the video says, the most I can find about her is that she has a bachelor's degree in language and literature. How do you know how the systems work and how they affect the horses? You haven't even studied it properly. I know how. I took a course in psychopharm, and I know how. I have also done research independent of my school to discover those things. Apparently, according to you, I still have no idea what I'm talking about, but I have looked into this research independently. You don't have to have a degree by your name to like indicate to everyone else that you are an authority on the subject. Like, you can be an authority in anesthesia, but you might not be an authority in, engineering. But just because you have a degree, like, I don't know. I mean, I get it because Raquel Dreisma talks about the autonomic nervous system, but you don't have to have a full-on degree on the autonomic nervous system to know a thing or two about it or enough to do a study. So anyway, yeah, I have some points, but I think I pretty much covered them. Yeah. So can one learn outside of having a degree? Absolutely. Do you have to have a degree to prove you know a thing or two? No. Look at most horse trainers. I would be willing to bet most of us that have started riding under saddle and started with a trainer did not ask that trainer, what school did you graduate from? What program did you graduate from? You look at their experience and their achievements. So, fine. I keep saying that. Okay, so she says the study is biased and not scientific, and that even Dreisma herself claims that it's anecdotal in the beginning of the book. So I have it in front of me, and I have looked through it, and it does not say anywhere that is anecdotal, and I would like to read you an excerpt from the methods section of her introduction. I believed in an evidence-based approach to this research. I wanted my conclusions to be based on documentation, not wishful thinking. This is why video footage forms the basis of the research. Alone and together with Riston Olthorf, I filmed domesticated horses in the Netherlands. Several people also sent me videos of domesticated horses, mostly in the Netherlands, but also a few from England and the US. I categorized these videos and watched them repeatedly. I paid attention to the position of ears, eyes, nose, mouth, and tail of the horse. I also made note of body postures and movements of horses and people when they were present in the videos. I did not include vocal communications. I analyzed 200 video recordings for this research. Every communication signal described in this book was seen at least 35 times to avoid overgeneralization of a signal seen only once. So it was possibly highly unusual. This means I might have assumptions about certain signals, but I have not included them in this book because I have not seen them often enough or in sufficiently varied contexts to be confident in my view. So she accounts that there's only one anecdotal experience, and that's when she details one that she didn't get footage of in a case of learned helplessness. But that's literally it. So I mean, I don't know, maybe there's a difference in like a summary of the book or something, but in her method section, she's pretty clear that it's her analysis and it was seen multiple times. And I don't think that that is enough to completely disregard everything that Raquel Dreisma has done, which the video creator indicates. So she says that she has read 2 different theories on why horses lick and chew that she thinks applies. So she says a human study that says licking and chewing can lower cortisol levels. So she said it's not like, oh, my cortisol's high, so I'll lower it down by licking and chewing. And when some people get stressed, they clench their jaw or chew gum really fast. It's a way for your body to deal with stress and turn it into eustress. She goes on to talk about the 2 different types of stress, eustress and distress. Essentially, eustress is the quote-unquote good kind, and distress is the quote-unquote bad kind. So clenching your jaw and chewing gum is a nervous reaction, and it is not the same as licking and chewing or a one-to-one behavior comparison, because like by definition, licking and chewing as a calming signal would be a result or an attempt to communicate relaxation. So it's not the same, because you don't clench your jaw or chew gum when you are trying to communicate that you're calming or trying to calm another person. If anything, clenching your jaw when you're with another person would signal a bit of aggression. And chewing your gum really fast is more of a nervous reaction. Like an applicable one in a horse's situation would be probably like dancing in place and not able to stand still. It's more nervousness than a byproduct of what's happening. So fine. I mean, I get it. Like you chew gum because you're nervous and there's an outlet for that, but that's not really the same as something that is happening because a de-stress is happening and also asking for the aggressor to stop aggressing. Okay, she says that you can utilize those behaviors so you don't get overwhelmed by the stress, so you can focus and get your job done. But my question is, why would you want to put your horse in a situation where it has to just cope to get the job done? If your horse is licking and chewing, by what she says here, if she's comparing the jaw clenching and the speedy gum chewing to licking and chewing, then it would be the same as saying that you're dealing with stress in a better way because it's stressing you out. So why would you put your horse in a situation where it has to do that when there are a slew of alternatives to achieve the same thing? I also will probably hit that point multiple times. But anyway, and then she contradicts later on in the video because she says she doesn't want her horse to just cope, but without saying, that's what she's done here. Okay, so she says there's a theory with horses when they are in flight mode and their stress hormones are high that they might lick and chew to bring it down instinctively. I agree. However, she then says it's a horse realizing that what they once perceived as a threat is no longer a threat. That's absolutely not the same as the human study. The human study shows the opposite. When she compares clenching the jaw and chewing, it's a stress response and a way to cope and have an outlet for a surplus of overwhelming stress. But then in this alleged study, she says that they are licking and chewing because it brings them down instinctively. So I'm confused, but I agree that they do it to bring themselves down in the case of a calming signal, which I guess I should say a calming signal is when you are trying to communicate a desire for lowering energy both in yourself and also in somebody else. Like I said, at a cashier, when they look particularly threatening and you're like, oh, I don't know if they're going to be mean to me, you might smile at them. It makes yourself feel better. You're doing something about it. And also smiling produces happier feelings within yourself. And also you're trying to get the other person to lighten up and be nicer to you, which is the same thing that would, according to my theory, happen when a horse licks and chews in the case of join up. They're asking the aggressor to stop being aggressive and also relaxing as a byproduct. So, okay, cool. So she goes on to say that, in so many words, that if a horse were in distress, they would either flee or go into learned helplessness, not start licking and chewing. So her assumption is that it must be a good type of stress to lick and chew, which show me the science on that in this specific case, not in the case of a human that is reacting to a circumstance. Or because, I mean, jaw clenching and chewing gum faster, I mean, I don't see how that is comparable to this situation. So if the horse were in true distress, the idea that they would either flee or go into learned helplessness are not the only options available to the horse. They might also try to help the aggressor de-escalate. They might also try to calm themselves. So, I mean, but they can also do that while being in distress. How many times have you been in distress and tried to calm yourself down? Whatever. Okay, she goes on to say that when they enter the Eustress mode, that they recognize the once frightening threat as a friend or ally, something that they can play with or problem solve. I don't see the science to support that. It sounds a little bit anthropomorphic to me. And also, I think my explanation explains it a little bit better, that when the horse begins licking and chewing, it comes as a result of realizing what is reinforcing their behavior. So when the horse is running around the round pen or trotting or whatever, and when the trainer backs off, they learn that the behavior that happened just prior to the trainer backing off is the one that is triggering the trainer backing off. So they learn that that's how they get the trainer to back off, not that, oh, well, since you're backing away, you're a friend now. I don't see how that works. So, I mean, if you can send me an article that says that the horses, when they enter Eustress mode, they begin to recognize that the once frightening threat is now a friend or an ally or something that they can play with, I am all ears, but I don't see that being the case. It sounds like a lovely reality, but I think it's fictional. She goes on to use my words against me as she quotes me saying that horses like to problem solve, but I really don't know that I've ever used it outside of a positive reinforcement context. Now, I will say that doesn't mean that I don't think that they can't enjoy problem solving in negative reinforcement. It would stand to reason that that's absolutely possible. However, when a horse is having ropes tossed at it and being clucked to and having aggressive body language being directed at it, I really don't think that that is the type of problem solving that horses get true enrichment out of. She says that frequently in her video, that negative reinforcement and join up is enriching, and I don't think that this specific circumstance is. To me, we could have different definitions of enrichment, but to me, enrichment means an activity that brings, good emotions and, endorphins to an event. Things that are enriching to me are like reading or working on this podcast usually, and doing schoolwork and feeling productive. Those bring enrichment to my life. Having to worry about money or getting in fights with people, those do not add enrichment. They stress me out and take years off my life. But okay, we could have different definitions of what enrichment means. But she says that in a moment she will explain why licking and chewing is not a displacement tactic to get the handler to stop doing what they're doing. So she disagrees with me on that. She said that horses don't only get enrichment from positive reinforcement, but also with negative reinforcement. And while, like I said, I don't totally disagree, where's the evidence on that? And that's the thing that bothers me, because she took such a hard stance against me on not providing sufficient evidence, but then all of these claims that she makes, very few are supported by science. So, I mean, she's just arguing with me, essentially, which is fine, cool. You can have your own opinion, but don't say that my study is my presentation is totally invalid because I didn't present studies. In her video, she only links the Monty Roberts video. She does not provide any of these studies which she's referencing. So, I mean, I couldn't even take a look at what she's talking about. So the next theory is about endorphins triggering salivation. She says she hasn't read anything about horses. So that's fine. I mean, you can have assumptions, but again, frustrating that you're attacking all of my studies and the ones you're using to support your argument are not relevant to horses explicitly. So she says she doesn't know, but anecdotally her horse yawns and licks when he gets a massage and wasn't under stress. And this is where I am like, this is apples to oranges, my dude. So she says she thinks it's an endorphin thing, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to notice that the behaviors that I'm arguing against also happen when the horse is getting a massage. Yes, they do. I agree. That happens. She then references Jim Masterson saying that he has worked on thousands of horses face-to-face, not through video like Dreisma, and yet she took many of the videos, but fine, she argued that it was face-to-face was better. So says that, or by her definition, using Jim Masterson and his method to support her, prerogative here is not a proper study, and by definition, not valid evidence, yet she uses it to refute my points and continually says that Dreisma's work is irrelevant when it's even put into a research study format, where she's refuting me by using Masterson and anecdotal evidence. Like, I get it, and I agree that Jim Masterson, his methods relieve tension and stress, and you get those responses because the horse is feeling good and calming down and enjoying it, but that doesn't mean that those behaviors are happening for the exact same reason in join-up. I'll take it back to the smiling thing. You don't do the same behavior for we don't have just one smiling reaction. It's not paired with the exact same emotions every time, regardless of context. Context is so important in training, and any applied behavior analysis student or professional would know that antecedent arrangement is the basis for all training scenarios. You have to set up the environment for success to get training to happen properly, and if you don't, then everything falls apart because context matters. So, anyway, saying that the horse is licking and chewing and that it's not a bad sign or a coping mechanism or a displacement mechanism and that the horse is coming out of stress, but instead that it's a good thing. So she refuted everything that I said, all of the potential possibilities for why that behavior is happening, because I was focusing on the negative aspect. And this is where, this is kind of meta, but I've done an episode with Shelby Dennis that will be coming out later. But we talked about how, it's so difficult to cover topics like this because it feels like you're constantly, everything you say, you're like, okay, but only in this situation. It's dependent on the horse, blah, blah, blah. And like you're constantly qualifying and making disclaimers, and it's so exhausting. And in the dominance theory episode, I did not provide all the alternative examples for when a horse licks and chews. Like, for instance, to this logic, a horse could lick and chew during feeding time, but that doesn't always mean a horse is trying to crunch up food. It's frustrating because it's such a simplistic way of viewing it, and speaks to the fact that just because you have a doctoral level degree does not mean you're an authority on everything. And just because you're a horse person who has a doctoral degree in something else doesn't mean you're an authority. You can study it by all means, and you can learn, and I am not discounting this individual's intelligence or opinion here, but to say that I am totally out of line because I don't have a doctoral degree and didn't do my due diligence is really frustrating, because it's not only discrediting me and saying that I'm doing something wildly irresponsible to my following, and that I am just trying to shame everyone into believing what I believe is just frankly offensive, because that's not what I stand for at all. I apologize again if my stuff has come across like that. I will do better in the future to, really make sure that I'm careful with what I say. But at the same time, I can't please everyone. People that don't like positive reinforcement or don't want to use it are not going to like what I have to say inherently, because they don't want to use it and they don't like it, and they likely have a reason for not wanting to do it. So I can't cover all my bases. I can't make everyone happy, and I am always trying to do my best. So at the very least, this has served as a wake-up call to really pay attention in the future. So anyway, again, she discusses how it's an endorphin thing, and that triggers salivation, but it's a human study. She doesn't have any evidence on the horse study. So she said multiple times in her video about studies that I use, she was like, just throw that one out. It's completely irrelevant. It's not valid, doesn't qualify. So I say the same about this one. Yes, a horse relaxing is always a good thing, but there's a great disparity in round pinning session and a massage. Can you imagine the difference in emotions between a horse who is being round penned, and a horse that's getting a massage. One is a very relaxing, quiet, calm, peaceful environment where good things are happening to their body. The only touch they're receiving and the only interaction they're receiving is very slow, methodical, targeted to help them relieve stress and tension in their bodies, while the other one is about achieving the horse following you. And that's often done through tossing lead ropes or swinging whips and bags. And while she frequently restates that that is not how Monty Roberts does it, that is how many people who do join up do it. So anyway, I guess that kind of leads me into my next section here, which is on join up. So she breaks her video up into multiple sections, and I thought that'd probably be a good way to do this as well. So she starts this section by saying, you should actually watch the video from Monty Roberts because it's not the way Jill, portray it at all, and it's clear I didn't do my due diligence to actually study his method. And she said, even if you don't believe in it, before you debate a subject, you should thoroughly investigate the side that you're debating against. That's basic debate theory, yet it's very obvious I did not do so. Which, okay, we're talking about shaming and offending and all those good things. Hey, dude, tone it down, maybe? And I get it. People are passionate, and I am the same way, but yikes, that is a personal attack because I don't know if you know this or not, but I, at one point, had 2 videos up on my YouTube channel, 2 separate videos. One, an original video of me teaching people. It was called How to Do Join Up, and then a second video on an updated way of doing it, and I did it with Zoe and Bubbles. Some of you may remember those videos if you followed me for a while, but I think either a few months ago to last year, at some point in there, I deleted those videos because I did not want people learning how to do join up from me because I don't agree with it, and which sucked because those videos had hella views and that made me hella money, but we can't be doing that. So ethically, there are a lot of videos on my channel that have a lot of information that I no longer agree with, but those I was hard no. So unfortunate. If she's just recently started following me, then she might not know that I've done that before, but it's frustrating that there was just that assumption that I have no idea what the hell I'm talking about when the video, it's so funny because when I was learning how to do join up, the video that she links and says that I didn't do my due diligence and watch was a video that I watched over and over and over again when I first started doing it, and I quoted it multiple times. I wish I had the video so I could prove it, but I don't have it. So either take my word or don't, but I used to do join up a ton, and it's really frustrating that there's just this assumption, it's saying, and again, pot kettle black, that I didn't do my due diligence when neither did you. I mean, I'm sure it's on my Instagram somewhere, but who cares that much? Not me. So anyway, frustrating. I've seen this video. I've watched it multiple times. I am very familiar with Monty Roberts' work, and I incorporated it into my training for years, probably from 2014, I think was when I started it, to about 2017. So, I mean, that was a long time of me doing that. So, whatever. Call me ignorant. She begins by saying that she is not a Monty Roberts certified instructor, but has worked as a therapeutic riding trainer for the horses. She goes on to say she didn't really use join up, which I appreciate the disclosure. But again, just because you were a therapeutic riding instructor does not mean you know a thing or two about join up, especially if you've never done it. I have actually done it multiple times on many different horses. And it frustrates me that there's so much animosity in her video about how ignorant I am and that I've never, I haven't done my proper due diligence and I've never studied this and that I couldn't possibly know what I'm talking about because I disagree. Okay. It's fine. I'm fine. We're fine. Biting the shit out of my cuticles. Okay. She said she watched a lot of videos and read a lot about it and says join up is pretty much for horses who have never been around humans or have bad experiences with them. I want to quickly do a poll in the audience here. If you guys have ever used join up, how often was it on a horse that had never been touched before? Because I'm going to go ahead and say that most of the people that use the join up method have not been working with horses that are extreme problem or wild cases. So and this is where I kind of diverge, because talking about Monty Roberts doing join up is one thing. Talking about people who do join up lowercase j, lowercase u not the same thing. And I think that's an important distinction to make. And that is why in my description of my podcast episode, when I talked about it, episode 31, I did not capitalize it because I was not specifically talking about only Monty Roberts. While I do agree that his methods are still not force-free, I don't disagree that other people are worse, and that if they, and like she goes on to say in her video, if they're doing it with whips and whatever, that they're not doing it the Monty Roberts way, which fine, I guess that makes sense, but it's only a slight variation on the central idea, which is the same. Okay, so again, says she read a lot about it, but hasn't really done it, which is another point on like, okay, I'm really not sure why you're arguing this, because if it's not something that's near and dear to your heart and a central, working point basis for your training, I'm not sure why you're going to die on the hill for it. But okay, it just, I don't know, it's frustrating that like you don't have firsthand experience in it and you're throwing your title around. Like, and I genuinely, again, I'm really not trying to be mean. Like, it's just really frustrating that so much of this video was targeted at me, saying that I don't know what I'm talking about, and all the people that I'm citing don't have the proper credentials to be talking about what they're talking about, yet neither does she, and is so adamant that these people that have at least tried and have some credentialing have no idea what they're talking about. Maybe that's just me, and it's entirely possible that I am just sensitive to this because I feel attacked, and I am on some level going to be inherently defensive. And again, I really want to stress, not trying to attack this person. I am sure they're well-intentioned and just want to do what's best for their horses. But I mean, I straight up don't agree. And I feel like the way this was approached was really unfair. Anyway, so Monty Roberts says, I look like a predator, this horse, but not I can speak horse. So he does say a variation of that in the video that she references, and I think now would probably be a good time for me to review that video. So, because then a lot of what I am going to say, she says in her video, will make sense. So I, for memory lane's sake, took a trip and watched this video. And when I clicked on it, I immediately smiled because I was like, this is the same video I've watched. But before I get into this video, I just want to say there's another video of him working with a horse. The video is called New Hollywood Zane, Willing Partner. He says he never wants the horse to feel pain as he's throwing a rope at the horse, which scares it, or else why would the horse move? The whole point of throwing the rope at the horse is to get it to move. Otherwise, why would you throw the rope? You know it's going to move, but he paints it in a way that makes it sound less offensive, like saying toss, or it's such a light rope. But okay, cool, it might not hurt the horse, but do we just completely disregard mental state, emotion, fear? Or it's a prey animal, you're using that to your advantage to make it do what you want. So anyway, he says looking them in the eye means go away, and if you want to change that, you have to change their language. He says tossing the line and an open hand is a big go away. These are near direct quotes, by the way. Like, the things that I'm making points about are direct quotes. He is making it uncomfortable for the horse to be away from him. So if they don't come closer, it's uncomfortable. He adds either the cat claw or throws the rope or slaps it against his leg, makes a smooching sound, does aggressive body language, etc., etc. I'll define that more later. The Zane horse does not immediately walk up to him, and as Monty Roberts tries, when he faces the horse to change shoulders, the horse visibly flinches. So I'm going to paint a picture here for you. So in watching this video, Monty Roberts, he has the horse going around, and he says, okay, this horse is ready to join up. So then he sends the horse forward a little bit more, and then he turns his back to him. His whole thing is like a 45-degree angle. Essentially your body position is just like really relaxed. You don't look like a threat, and you're signaling to the horse to come into you, which why would the horse come into you if you're not, whatever, but fine. So the horse doesn't move. It stops and it's facing him, but it doesn't move. So he starts doing like kind of moving positions on an arc around the horse. So if the horse were the center of the circle, he's moving around one half of it, and kind of like a semicircle. And when he moves to one side, he has to change which directions he's facing. And when he does that, at one point, he is fully facing the horse, like front on, and the horse visibly flinches. You can see its whole body, like like a startle response. Have you ever seen like you've been watching a horse and a loud sound goes off, or like a tree branch falls, something scares the horse and it kind of like jumps in place and its whole body goes rigid for a second and then relaxes? That happened just from him spinning around directions. Like, that is not a horse who is seeing you as an ally and as a partner. I'll read some more of her arguments in a moment, but that is really important to consider. That, like, this whole thing is based off the horse trusting you, respecting you, or, in her words, is to be seen as an ally or a friend or somebody to play with, something enriching. A horse doesn't flinch unless it is afraid. Period. Like, or there's a fly. Okay, sorry, I have to cover all my bases. So this is not a horse who is no longer afraid of him. This is not a horse who has completely recovered from being like seeing the human as a predator, and now he's not a predator. This is not a horse who has made that transition. The horse is still afraid of the person. And he does join up with the horse. The horse eventually walks up to him. He walks up to him on a wider circle. And as he pets the horse, it starts leaning backward away from him, and he grabs the halter, and when he lets go, the horse takes a step backward. The horse is not comfortable being around him, and it's very subtle, but at the same time, the horse is still not comfortable with him. So, I mean, like, a horse who is comfortable with you is not going to back away when you're petting it, unless it just doesn't like being pet on its face, which is also entirely possible. So, anyway, he says this horse is nervous, and then he starts walking again, and the horse follows him. So, if the horse is still nervous around him, why is it following him? If a horse is nervous about you, it does not see you as a friend or an ally. It's following him for another reason. It's reinforcement history, but we'll get into that. Okay, so in the video that she links in her description, it's called Monty Roberts Explains Join Up, has the little R, I forget what that means, but it's like copyright, with Equus the horse, EQUUS. Sorry, I forgot how to spell for a moment, even though it's right in front of my dumb face. Okay, so the horse is led in and looks around at the people. Roberts steps back, the horse looks the other direction, and Roberts pulls on the lead and releases when the horse steps to him. So you can picture this in your head. The horse is brought in. He has a hold of the lead now. The horse looks away, and he pulls to bring the horse to him. And his timing with pressure and release is awesome. Like, he's so good at when the horse gives the appropriate response, immediately lets off the pressure. It's very good negative reinforcement. So he does this several more times, pulling the horse to him. He's talking to the audience the whole time, but I was predominantly, I went back several times watching what he did and then listening to what he was saying. So he does this several times, walking back, pulling the horse to him. And when the horse does not automatically follow, that's when he does the pulling. So initially, at the beginning of this session, the horse walks in the arena and he's just kind of looking around. His head is not super high up in the air. He's not rigid and overly alert. He doesn't have a foot cocked. His tail is not up in the air. He doesn't look stiff. He looks a bit curious and perhaps overwhelmed, but it's not like overtly I'm in panic flight mode. It's more like heightened awareness, I guess, and this is where we get into semantics, but I do think it is important that we pay attention to the behaviors. The horse is not doing behaviors indicative of extreme duress, which is when they would kick into flight mode, when they are afraid, which is a point that is made later on, but so this horse is looking around and Monty is backing away from him, and the horse is being pulled towards him if the horse does not automatically follow him. So this is the start of the horse's reinforcement history. It learns that if it doesn't automatically follow him when he walks away, then he's going to get pulled on. So the girl that filmed this video about me arguing my dominance theory podcast, she says that the studies that Kath Henshaw did, who I cited, that did the RC car study with Join Up, they positively reinforced their horses to follow the car before the study was done, so that it would be like the car was leading the horse into the round pen. I did not fact check that. I have a Patreon live Q&A at 7, so I'm kind of trying to like get this done so I can get it up. But yeah, so I mean, this is a comparable situation where he is beginning the horse's reinforcement history. Not unlikely that this horse hasn't experienced this before, but it is learning in this environment with all of these things going on with this particular person that if it does not follow, it's going to get tugged on. So this is a way to overtly use negative reinforcement. There is a literal tie on the horse, and if it does not succumb to the pressure, it doesn't get the release or the reinforcement. So at 1 minute and 50 seconds, the horse tries to walk away or to the side. It's unclear because of the angle, but the horse turns his head to the side and takes a step like he's going to move away from Monty, and he corrects him. He pulls the lead back to where the horse has to walk forward to him because he has a hold of his head. So the horse walks around, and when he stops, the horse doesn't. So he pulls the lead under the horse's chin against his chest and just jerks it like multiple times. Unnecessary, and it goes back to the kind of, I don't know for sure, I have to say, but there's this old school mentality that if a horse does not stop when you stop, that backing is its punishment, and that through backing, it'll learn that if it walks in front of you, then it's going to get backed up, and that backing up is a punishment, which is exactly how he's using it. There is no denying that. When the horse keeps walking, when Robert stops, he gets yanked on, and it happens multiple times in the video. Yeah, and then he leans into the horse's space until it backs up. So his entire body language is sending the horse backwards. The horse is experiencing an aversive stimulus, which is banging on the lead until it backs up, and he continues to do this multiple times. And then a child speaks in the video, and he says, "Hey, could we quiet the little voices? That'll really catch the horse's attention," which completely defeats the purpose of, if the only time you can do this is when there's no distractions catching the horse's attention, in saying that you're becoming, a horse's ally. Why does there not need to be any distractions for the horse to begin to trust you? If anything, you need to become the thing that the horse trusts, so that the horse wants to move towards you and look to you for, whether something is wrong or not, as a foal would look to a mare. Not that horses are one-to-one with humans, but that is in their behavioral repertoire. And if they trust you, they'll begin to do that. So I'm not sure why it's entirely relevant that the horse be focused on him the entire time. He is controlling the environment so that the horse has less opportunity to get distracted, which is great. I mean, antecedent arrangement is important, but it also pops a question mark in my head. Anyway, so he unclips the horse, and the horse stands there, and so he goes to slap. He's got like this cotton lunge line. It's like a really, really long line rolled up into a big circle. And he throws it up to slap it against his leg, but in doing so, it's clear if you slow the video down, when he throws it up, the horse ducks his head away. The alternative is just getting hit in the face by the rope, because it was that close. So the horse ducks away, and then with the slap against his leg, the horse commits to moving away entirely. So the swing, the horse leans, and then when he slaps, the sound makes the horse move away from him. Why would the horse move away from him when the sound happens? Does the horse enjoy the sound? Is the horse motivated by the sound? He is motivated. So why? Because it was frightening, uncomfortable, potentially alarming to some degree. There's a reason this horse is moving away from the lead rope. And so Monty continually says that this horse wants to be in flight mode. When the horse is led into the arena, he's like, this horse's heart rate is probably quite high. He is in a new surrounding. He doesn't know me. This arena is weird. It's got lights on. He's never been in here during nighttime, blah, blah, blah. And so he is saying that this horse is in flight mode. The horse is not in flight mode. If he turned the horse loose, the horse stood there. If it were in flight mode, it would have been, jumping around, bouncing the whole time. And then if he turned it loose, it would have just started galloping immediately. We've all seen horses in flight mode. That was not flight mode. You can watch the video for yourself and tell me when that horse gets led into the arena if it is in flight mode. It might have been a little bit, on edge because it's somewhere totally new with new people. It doesn't know what's going on. There are tons of people surrounding this round pen. So I'm sure it was on edge to some degree, but it definitely was not all the way up in flight mode. There was some level of awareness, but not that what he's talking about and what the video creator says frequently. So anyway, he spooks the horse to get it to go forward. And so like the thing that irritates me about this is because like, why are you sending the horse away? You're trying to prove to this horse by the video creator's definition, and we'll talk about that in more detail in a moment, but like you're trying to prove to this horse that you're a friend, an ally, a source of enrichment, a plaything, etc., etc. Why are you intentionally, deliberately scaring it? The horse is not moving because it wants to. The horse was perfectly still until when he unclipped the lead. It was free, and then he slung the lead in its face. It ducked, and then he slapped his leg, and the horse moved off. I mean, the horse didn't bolt or jump out of its skin or anything like that, presumably because it's been around enough people before. But, I mean, it wasn't an inherently frightening situation, but enough so that the horse was like, I'm getting away from you. Why would you want to be that stimulus? It doesn't make sense to me. You're trying to prove to this animal that you are not the predator you appear to be. So why are you deliberately frightening it? I don't get it. So he says, eyes on eyes and shoulders square, as he walks straight behind the horse at around a 30-degree angle and says, I'll just pitch the line out, which unravels, hitting the horse on the hind end. Arguably, it's not painful, but evidently frightening enough given the horse's body language. He tucks his haunches and his tail, and he accelerates away from Roberts. So as Roberts is saying, eyes on eyes, shoulders square. So what that means is he is looking at the horse's eyes, which according to him means go away, and facing the horse is an aggressive stance, and he is behind the horse. And the video creator frequently says that he's not driving the horse, he's not in a driving position, but when you are behind the horse, staring straight at it, throwing a lead rope behind it, it's going to run away from you. Like, what do you mean? Like, the horse is not already in flight mode. It is not desiring to run. He made the horse run because he made himself scary. I don't really get this. Okay, but anyway, Robert says they're flight animals. I'm giving him a chance to express his flight tendencies, so he'll leave me. Okay. Without ever giving the horse a chance to relax in the environment or see if he'd go there on his own. So he's not giving the horse a choice, and this is the whole foundation of his training being force-free, is where I have a problem. I do agree that this is certainly more ethical than, say, whipping a horse. That's definitely more abusive. But at the same time, to claim that this is force-free training simply because the animal doesn't have equipment on is just way oversimplified. You are forcing the horse to do something. Like, the horse does not have a choice. He didn't turn the horse loose and stand there with his hands folded to see if the horse would just kind of walk around and sniff, or maybe he would start running and galloping, or maybe he would just hang out with Roberts the whole time. He has no idea because he just assumed that this horse wanted to go into flight mode, and that's exactly what he says. He wants to go into flight mode, so then he pitches the line at it and sends it forward. So, it's just... that's forcing the horse to choose. The horse either gets to choose between standing and letting Roberts aggress at him and not moving, or following his natural tendency, which is to run away. And Roberts knows that. That's why he does it, because it works. So he smooches when the horse begins to slow around the timestamp 5:10. So he's not letting the horse slow down. He wants it to keep going. He has this like theory about it going around a quarter of a mile, I think. It was like several turns around the arena, and then he switches directions and he goes back the other direction. And then, so he's not letting the horse do what it wants to do. This horse wants to slow down and stop running, but he claims that the horse wants to go into flight mode, so he's encouraging it. Doesn't add up. That's two contradictory ideas. At 5:19, the horse slows down, and then he runs at the haunches with his arms out big to the side, like if you're trying to scare a bear. He just throws his arms out to the side, blows a raspberry, which sounds akin to and the audience laughs, and like it seems like a funny, happy environment. He's not doing anything. He's not hurting the horse. He's not hitting it. How could it be unethical, or how could it be forceful? If you had a human running at you with their arms big out to the side, blowing raspberries at you, are you gonna be like, hey dude, I think you're hella cool? You're probably gonna take off running because that's it's unusual. Why is he doing that? Like, it doesn't make any sense, but like, it's so frustrating because the audience is laughing because Roberts is being silly to people because they understand raspberries are funny and his body language looks awkward from, objectively, I guess they would to me. So maybe subjectively, whatever. But to the horse, he's like, oh my God, why are you running at me with your arms out and making scary noises? So the horse's body language, if we're, removing anthropomorphic phrases, the horse tucks his tail and accelerates. He is running away from Roberts because one could assume that those behaviors are indications of fear. So the horse cross canters, and when he breaks, presumably because he is unbalanced, Roberts throws the lines at his haunches again. So that is I don't know, it's just frustrating. It's like punishing the horse for trying to get more comfortable. And then Roberts says he leaves me and he's happy about that because I kind of worry him anyway, and then continues to give the horse a reason to be fearful. It doesn't make any sense to me. You're trying to prove to this horse that you are not a predator, allegedly. But then you keep doing predatory things and proving to the horse that you're frightening. And then he goes on to say, for 50 million years, this horse has studied his own communication system, and I've discovered it. That sounds a bit like he thinks he is communicating to the horse on the horse's level, which to some degree, of course you can, because, if you relax your body posture, the horse is more likely to be relaxed. If you walk up to your horse head on, or a horse you don't know, this would be a more obvious circumstance. If you walk up to a horse you've never met, and maybe it's a little bit leery of humans, you walk up to it head on and just march up to it without slowing down. You got a good pace, maybe you're in a hurry. You walk up to the horse, it's going to run away from you. But if you instead maybe make a curve and take an arc like a horse would do, you keep your eye line downcast and you maybe have a shoulder to it and you're not approaching at a great speed, the horse is probably more likely to come up to you. That is basic equine communication, but that doesn't mean you're necessarily speaking horse. And the creator of the video frequently says Monty Roberts is not claiming that he speaks horse. And the times, I get that this is probably a bit confusing because I have in the past said you can't communicate to a horse like a horse would, but that is in the circumstance of saying that when your horse bites you in the cross ties and you smack it, you're communicating it to it like another horse would because another horse might bite back. One, you're assuming that all horses respond the same way, and B, you're not that's a punishment and a justification for punishment rather than actually trying to get the horse to receive a message that's not just ouch, you bit me, don't do that. So I mean, I don't know if that distinction is entirely clear, but the point is it's fine to communicate to a horse in a way that the horse will understand, but to claim that you're communicating to the horse at the horse's level is not entirely accurate, especially when you say that this is how you're communicating to the horse, that you've discovered their language system, but all you're doing is forcing the horse to run because you claim it wants to, and then if it changes gait or slows down, which is exactly proving or disproving that the horse wants to be in flight mode. Whatever. I think I've reiterated that enough. Okay, so when he asks the horse to change direction, he slaps his leg with the line over and over, moves to the horse in aggressive body language, which I will, because objectively, what does aggressive body language mean? So what I saw in the video, you are more than welcome to watch it, is he steps in the horse's path, takes a big step out, moves forward into the horse's space where they would collide if the horse kept going, slaps the lead rope against his leg, saying, don't come over here, because he's making a big, loud energy. The horse knows if he runs into that lead rope, he's going to get hit in the face. It's a scary noise. He turns and goes the opposite direction. So then he throws the line at the horse. Whatever. When he changes direction, he says that the horse will be more relaxed because he's been here before. When he changed directions again, he says that the horse will be more relaxed here before, and psychologically he's more comfortable. But if you pay attention to Robert's body language, he's not being aggressive anymore. That's the difference. He's saying that the horse is more comfortable because he's gone that direction before, but if you watch the difference in his body language the first time around versus the second time, it's entirely different. The first time he's running at the horse, blowing raspberries, throwing lead ropes at it, and the second time he's just kind of letting the horse go around at a trot. When the horse broke to trot in the first time around, he threw the rope at it and made it go forward. Like, it doesn't make sense. Make it make sense. So the rope is at his side. It's in a relaxed position. He's not running at the horse. He's not throwing line. He's not advancing into the horse's space in any way. He's standing in a very neutral shoulder to hip position. And if you have never lunged a horse, typically, if you are facing the horse and you are between the horse's shoulder and between the horse's hip, it means, good pace, keep going. If you line your body with the horse's haunches, it's driving, asking the horse to go forward. And if you're in front of their shoulder, it's either move out or you're blocking them and asking for maybe a change of direction or to slow down. So he's standing in a very neutral position. He's no longer walking towards the horse's hind end or making any scary advances. So of course the horse is going to relax and be calmer. He has no reason to keep accelerating because he's not in flight mode. And I'm not frustrated at the people. I'm just frustrated at that, like, this doesn't make sense and it's not supported by the evidence. I don't understand it. So, okay. Anyway, he bangs his leg against the horse and the horse canters for a step and then comes back down to a trot, and then Roberts does not aggress, so the horse begins to lick and chew because it learned that was what he was looking for. So this is by definition negative reinforcement. He aggresses on the horse, and when the horse slows down, he doesn't apply any more pressure. So, and I'm assuming that he kept the horse going in this, like when he slapped his leg again. I could be totally wrong, but when he asked the horse to move forward and it just canters for a stride and then he backs off, I'm assuming it's so he could keep talking longer because the horse was approaching the quote-unquote join-up where he's learned that relaxing is what the answer is. But so the horse begins to lick and chew when Roberts lets off. So he's learning that this is what Roberts is looking for. So then Roberts says, there's the lowering of the head. It's like, I need a leader. He's speaking for the horse here and saying, like, the horse is lowering its head. He's explaining to the audience as if the horse is saying, I need a leader. A direct quote. Now, this is where I have a real problem with the previous video or the creator's video that, retaliated against what I said, because they repeatedly say in the video that he is not working off of dominance theory at all whatsoever. It's not dominance theory. It's not dominance theory. It's not dominance theory. The whole point of the video is debunking that I said it was dominance theory. Being the horse's leader is being dominant. The whole point is to get the horse to do what you want it to do or else. Like, I don't understand how this is not clear. But if you notice the horse's head is angled away from Roberts, it's in line with his outside leg, this is a calming signal where he's trying to signal to Roberts that he is no longer or not a threat at all. I don't think the horse was really ever a threat, but just kind of asking Roberts, like, can we calm down, be buddies? I'm not trying to threaten you. If you've ever seen horses out in the pasture together, especially horses that have never met each other before, they usually sniff noses and then turn away, or they turn away or approach the horses with their heads turned away. It is a kind of like a peace offering. Like, I'm not here to disrupt your day. So Roberts is saying the horse is lowering his head as if to say, I need a leader, which is a quote that he says in the video, but the horse's head is angled away from him. If it were, I need a leader, it might not be. It might just be in line, or it might be turned towards him, or he might be seeking out Roberts to follow instead of continuing around the rail on this. And this is also the idea that the horse is lowering its head in submission. It's not stated explicitly, but it would stand to reason that that's what he's implying, that the horse is asking for a leader and submitting by doing all of these behaviors. So submission implies dominance. You can't submit if there's no dominant. That doesn't make sense. And I also argue in my podcast against the idea of submission. You can't have one without the other. So he says, Monty Roberts says, I'm important in his life with his ear. So this is a euphemistic way for Roberts to say that the horse is paying attention to him because he knows if he doesn't, aversives will start. There have been several instances in this video and the other one that I referenced with the Zane horse that when they looked outside the arena, he would aggress. He would slap the lead rope, get their attention. And so the horse learns, okay, I better keep paying attention, keep my ear on this guy, or he's going to aggress. Another thing to think about is whenever do horses have their ear on something that they're not at all concerned or interested in? I mean, is it possible that the horse is simply interested in Roberts? Yeah, but it's more likely that he is paying attention so that he doesn't get a lead rope thrown at him. So as Roberts is looking for the horse to move in a smaller circle, he may not realize it, but he's backing away from the horse. He's moving his own body like straight away from the horse, more towards the rail, and keeps going on the same circle that the horse is in. So it draws the horse closer. And the reason that happens is because he's no longer pushing the horse on the rail. So if you think about it, when he has the horse going around the round pen, when he aggresses and moves towards the horse and sends it forward, he's moving into the horse's space and pushing the horse out. And there's an implied or else. If you come close to me, I will throw the line at you. And the horse is trying to avoid the line. If it's at the very end of the width of the line, at the very edge of the rail, he can't be reached. But when Roberts backs away, that is also I guess indirectly a human way of doing a calming signal. It is a non-threatening behavior to do. And then the horse is no longer stuck up against the rail either. He's not being pushed anymore. So the horse can come in. And then when that happens, then the horse learns that if he's closer to the trainer's not going to aggress, because that's what Roberts is looking for. So when the horse moves off the rail and Roberts doesn't aggress, the horse is like, I need to come closer. Is this making sense? Yes or no? It seems a lot more logical to me than, the horse suddenly trusts you now after you've chased it. My definition of chasing may differ from everybody else's. I don't mean Roberts is literally running straight behind the horse, chasing it around the arena. But making aggressive moves towards the horse and throwing ropes at it, or tossing is what he says, tossing ropes at it, is not the same, or is not the same. Dissimilar, that's the word, they made a whole word for that. Is not dissimilar from chasing, especially in a small confined area. And if the arena were to be bigger, he would probably have to keep up with the horse a little bit more. So consider that as well. Okay. The licking and chewing is a manifestation of the lowering of adrenaline, Robert says. You don't have to hit a horse to make him go faster. So both of those things, he's saying that the horse is lowering his adrenaline, that he was once stressed, which is in line with what everybody in this argument says, that the horse was once stressed and now he is not. The difference is this horse was not stressed to begin with. He was not stressed or concerned about Roberts. Roberts gave him a reason to be stressed and concerned, because if he didn't move, then he was going to get hit. I hope I'm making this clear. So the horse is now lowering adrenaline because it's been allowed to slow, but from their perspective, the horse is now trusting Roberts and is no longer fearful of him, and now that is why the adrenaline is lowering. He also says you don't have to hit the horse to make him go faster. So why is the horse going faster if he's not being hit? Well, if he's not being hit, it's likely not a pain response. So why else would the horse run away from what you're throwing at it? I'll let you answer that for yourself. He goes on to say about his cat claws that he's waving around, but he's also walking quicker, has a more rigid body posture, and is directing his energy at the horse. So he's clucking at the horse, and the horse canters, and then he says to remove the claw and slowly bring his arm down, but he's also slowing his pace, lowering his posture and his eye line, relaxing and not taking up so much space with his body. So one of those positions is very aggressive and threatening to a horse. One of them is very calm and quiet and inviting to the horse. Like the cat's claw, he could do the same, he could do everything he does in the video without using the cat claw thing. When he does just use the cat claw in some of the videos with other horses, and in this one, I believe, I could be totally wrong, I didn't take a note on it, but I know that there are some videos that I watched while I was looking at all of his content, that he, like, when he does do it and the horse doesn't move forward, he takes a step forward and does it bigger and more aggressive and more directed toward the horse. So it's not necessarily just the cat claw making him go faster. It's that his body language is saying, you better move or I'm going to get you. And when he brings the cat claw down, he's moving very slowly. He's lowering his energy. He lowers his voice. He takes up less space. He stops moving. He's not a threat anymore. And the horse recognizes that. So it's not this cat claw, I'm a predator, I'm not a predator. He's lowering his level of threat. He's also simultaneously reinforcing the horse's behavior. So when the horse responds how he would like with the licking and chewing or head lowering, the horse doesn't get the cat claw. So it's basic applied behavior analysis. So he says that people are saying that there may be a communication system between humans and horses now. And I agree. Yes, we communicate. It doesn't mean you can speak like a horse or that the horse will ever see you as a horse, but they do recognize your facial expressions and your body language and the tone of your voice and recognize it in pretty basic terms as far as like threat, non-threat, friend, good association, bad association, whatever. He says if you were to do it with a deaf person, they would respond. You would share that then called communication. But I would argue that if you did the same behaviors to a deaf person, they would also probably run away from you. So he then turns his back and walks away from the horse, no longer a threat. He has reinforced the horse the entire time that relaxation and being near him is the right answer when he walks away. And so, of course, the horse is going to come into him and follow him, because if the horse doesn't, it stays being chased. And it does happen in other videos. When the horse doesn't come into him or respond the way he wants, he sends it back out. So he says, if you have to respect tradition to the extent that you can't improve, then I don't want to be in their Hall of Fame. He's talking about how he got kicked out of the Hall of Fame for doing join up. And like, here's the deal. I entirely commend this man. I think he is incredibly brave for going against the norm and trying to do something better. He is trying to be more ethical, more humane. I agree that this is more ethical and more humane than a lot of what common trainers do, like Clinton Anderson's methods, beating horses over the head with flags and yanking on their bits and stuff. Obviously, this is more humane, but it's still not force-free, and I don't necessarily think it's ethical either, because a horse doesn't have a choice. In this methodology, if a horse had a choice, you would just stand in the center of the arena. And if the horse came up to you, great. If the horse left, great. The horse has a choice. In this scenario, it does not, because it understands that if it leaves the trainer, bad things happen. And when it is close and using calming signals, good things happen. He wants the horse to communicate that it's not a threat, and the horse learns through reinforcement that that is the case. So I highly respect him, especially for the comment about if you have to respect tradition to the extent that you can't improve. I don't want to be in their Hall of Fame. I agree. I am the exact same way. I want to learn and evolve and change things. And sometimes that means you have to learn and evolve and change past the people that had evolved and learned and changed past the old ways. I mean, like, it's okay. I'm not trying to attack Monty Roberts. I commend him for trying to do something better, but that doesn't mean that his way is the best, and it doesn't mean that he's always right. So at 12:06, the horse bites at his arm, which is just like the icing on the cake, that this is not a horse that sees him as an ally and something to not be feared. Like, he has the horse following him in join up, and it's at liberty, and the horse nips at his arm twice. One is unclear whether it actually nipped at him, so I didn't include that. But at 12:06, the timestamp on the video, he nips at at Monty's arm, and then he holds the horse's face as he clips him. So he discusses at the end about welfare and people beating on horses with whips. And while I appreciate that, and I agree with that sentiment, I'm not the biggest fan of whips. It's very hard to control the severity at which you hit. I tend to say that frequently. I understand that people use them and people are going to have differing opinions, but I try not to. But while I appreciate that, he doesn't realize that he's doing a milder form. Just because you're not hurting the horse doesn't mean you're giving him a choice. You're still scaring him and using his prey side to train rather than the forager side, per se. He said they can't do anything that's not natural. They can't do anything against you. They can't plan against you. And when they walk with you, it's because they want to walk with you. That's just, I agree with they aren't plotting against you. But you can train them to do things that are, unnatural and not in their behavioral repertoire. And beyond that, when they walk up to you, it is not exclusively because they want to be with you. Where's the evidence to support that? That is a euphemistic claim to justify the training. The horse is walking with him because of reinforcement and history. If you remember, I said at the beginning of talking about his video that he is reinforcing the horse through negative reinforcement, that when it walks towards him, it gets the relief of pressure. And it has worked the same way without the direct hands-on pressure that you get from a lead rope. But that doesn't mean that it's force-free. It's like to say that the horse wants to walk with you because it is. I mean, like, think of a human example. When you do something like, say, you take out your trash, it's not because you want to, but because you're trying to avoid having your house cluttered and full of trash. You're avoiding the aversive, the thing that you don't like or don't want. So, anyway, I'm going to switch back to now talking about the video creator. It's hard not to use names, but so anyway, you remember I said that he says, I look like a predator to this horse, not I can speak horse. And he does say a variation of that. He definitely says he communicates to the horses. She says, typically the horses that he brings into the round pen are already in their fight or flight mode, but because he looks like a predator, the environment, or it's already a stressful situation. So those factors put the horse into flight mode with most of the horses he works with. That's not true. Most of the people that do join up, outside of Roberts, aren't training wild horses. Most of them have personal horses that they've been working with forever, and they're trying it because it was a fad on Heartland, and then when you look up join up, you find Roberts. And that's fine. That's not necessarily a reflection of him or his beliefs or his practices. But to say that, he's that the horses are in flight mode when he works with them is not true. We've discussed this at great length, that the horse was just chilling and then he sent it off. So that's not true. She said, but that doesn't mean that the horse has to go in distress. It can be more a eustress at the end. At the end, I agree. It can be eustress because the horse is now using his stress to look into his behavioral repertoire to try and make the situation better for himself. But I disagree that it is impossible to have stress that is useful, and I can't remember if I said possible or impossible. Anyway, I'm not saying that they're mutually exclusive, that you are either in eustress or distress. I think you can be in distress and worried about what is happening at the same time that you're trying to make it better. She says the fact that the horses often poop before anything gets going when they get nervous to empty their GI tract, it's because they're going into the fight or flight mode and sympathetic nervous system. While yes, that's true, that doesn't mean that they're flighty, that they're trying to run away from you at the same time that they're pooping. It's not like, how many horses, I mean, I've loaded many. I don't know if this happens for a lot of people, but it's a similar situation when you go to load a horse on a trailer. Sometimes they'll poop before they get in because they're preparing if anything happens, but that doesn't mean they're running around or wanting to run, which is a frequent claim between the both of them, Monty Roberts and this individual. So he says, I'm quoting her. He says, it's the horse obviously doesn't want to be around me right now. I'm making him nervous. I look like a predator. Okay, good. So the natural solution to that problem is to show the horse that you are not a predator. Right? Wrong, apparently. If I had a horse that saw me as, a threat, because, I mean, you're not going to change the fact that you're a predator. You have eyes on the front of your head, and you look like one. You have thumbs. You are a predator in the horse's eyes. So if anything, you are working against that the entire time. Why on earth would you want to prove to the horse that you are a predator by aggressing towards it? If anything, the whole time I'm working with the horse that is afraid of me, I am working to prove that I'm not going to do anything frightening or scary. And yeah, it might take a little bit longer, but the horse actually has a choice. For instance, Juno, I've had episodes with her about her before. Used to, when you walked in the paddock with her, she would run to the opposite end because she wanted nothing to do with you. She was terrified of people. And now she walks up to you. But have I ever done join up with her or run her around a round pen or done anything remotely predatory? No, I have not. I have not used a cat claw. I have not tossed a lead rope at her or anything like that. If anything, I am working tirelessly to prove to her that I'm not ever going to do anything like that. But fine. Okay, so she says all he has is a cotton lead and that he doesn't use whips or bags or flags and advocates against whips, which is great. A+++. Let's not do those things. I don't believe in sacking out horses or anything like that. But saying that he has a cotton lead, whoop-de-doo, it's not going to hurt the horse, and making fun of anybody who's like, okay, that still could be a weapon, depends on how you use it, is just not factual. You're using it to scare the horse. You're not using it to inflict pain, but it is still to motivate the horse to move forward because there is an understood or else. Because the natural next step, if the horse doesn't move forward because you're swinging it at it or tossing it at its hind end, is to tap it. And then you escalate. That's what negative reinforcement does most of the time in traditional training. If the horse doesn't respond when you put your leg on, you add more leg. And that is not inherently a bad thing, but when it escalates to the point where you are beating the horse, then yes, that's bad. And Monty Roberts often doesn't have to do that because he's usually a new person in a weird environment, and so the horses move off when he makes a loud noise. But also, when you take a large step and like kind of jump at the horse, they're probably just going to run away from you no matter who they are, you know? Anyway, so it's like just not facing reality to say that, oh, he just has a cotton lead, you know, it's the horse's fault it wants to run. No, you're intentionally trying to frighten it. You're giving it a reason to run because if left to its own devices, it's not just running around the arena. That was proven in the video. So he lets the horse off the lead and the horse starts trotting around because the horse is in flight mode. So I'm not going to force it to be with me. I'm going to let it be in flight mode, which is what it wants to do. So the most aggressive thing he'll do is slap the cotton lead against his leg to get the horse to move forward. The other thing he does is sometimes throw the lead toward the horse, is what she says. So first she says the most aggressive thing he does is slap the lead rope against his leg, but I would argue it's more aggressive to toss the lead rope into the horse's space than slapping, but it depends on the horse. Some horses might find it more aversive to hear a loud sound than to have a lead rope tossed at it. It depends on the horse. But she's saying he lets the horse off the lead and it's in flight mode, and that's why it's trotting around. That is what she said. I quoted the video directly. He lets the horse off the lead, and the horse starts trotting around because the horse is in flight mode. So I'm not going to force it to be with me as if that is some sort of martyrdom. Forcing the horse to be with you has nothing to do with it. You could let the horse off the lead and see what it's going to do first without making it run around the arena. And she's saying that that the horse just started running around the arena when he let it off to prove the fact that the horse is in flight mode. And it wasn't. It's very clear in the video that the horse started moving away from Roberts because he slapped the lead rope and it entered the horse's, face bubble, and the horse ducked, and then he heard the noise and he moved off. So, I mean, you're twisting the circumstance to fit your narrative, and that's not what happened. So, it's semantics and euphemistic to be like, oh, he's just not, he's just slapping the lead rope against his leg. Like, yeah, but is it frightening to the horse? One of my favorite quotes from Alexander Kurland is, go to people for opinions and horses for answers. People can say all day long, oh, that doesn't hurt, oh, he's not afraid. But what is the horse behaving like? If the horse is tucking its tail and running, it's not because it's happy and it wants to be in flight mode, because it's a flight animal and Roberts is scared. Those were two separate things, being happy and the latter, by the way. So the horse's body language is how you tell. It doesn't matter what the object is. You could have a pool noodle and wiggle it at a horse. And if the horse finds that object intimidating or scary, or used in the way that Roberts uses it by aggressing in the direction of the horse and tossing it at the horse is probably going to run away from it. It's no different than swinging a whip. It's just a different object. If you can use a whip and not hit a horse, and it would have the same exact effect as that cotton lead. The difference is you can touch the horse with the cotton lead by tossing it, and it probably won't hurt near as bad as hitting it with a whip. But, I mean, arguably you could toss a whip at a horse and it would probably feel the same as tossing the cotton lead, depending on the material of the whip, but that's not the argument. Okay, she says he doesn't say he's going to be the horse's boss. No, but he says the horse wants a leader. That is semantics and euphemistic. He doesn't explicitly say it, but he says the horse is looking for him to be the leader. That is the same thing. He's not saying, I'm going to be this horse's leader. He says, the horse wants me to be his leader. It's a justification to continue the method. This is what happens. She says he walks briskly, but he does not chase. It's a small arena, dude. He doesn't have to run at the horse, but he does move very quickly towards the horse's hind end in an aggressive manner. If you did that to a dog or a person, they are going to run away. Go watch this video and do the behaviors that Monty Roberts is doing in the exact same way, and the horse will likely move away from you unless you do it all the time and the horse has been habituated to it. Generally speaking, when you advance on a horse like that, they're going to leave you. So she said he's basically saying that the horse wants to run, so yeah, I want you to run. She says, I said he does the panther claw thing to look dominating. Also, okay, she's talking about me. Sometimes I forget what my notes say. But she says, Jill, said that he does the panther claw to look dominating. And I want to point out that every time that she speaks for me or quotes me, she talks like this and mocks me. And, okay, way to be demeaning. It's not how we win debates, by making fun of people. But he's just saying, yeah, I look like a predator. The horse wants to run away from me, so I'm going to encourage it. That is a direct quote from her. I would not encourage my horse running away from me. I don't want to reinforce my horse running away from me. Unless it's just, I'm not going to chase you. I mean, maybe that's reinforcing, but it entirely depends on the horse. So, anyway. And yes, using a panther claw is aggressive at the very least, and it stems from the idea that you're going to get the horse to do what you want, which is arguably dominating. So his whole theory is approach and retreat. Other wild predators will approach but never retreat. Yes, I look like a predator, so I approach and then retreat after he follows the flight mode and doesn't force after he allows the flight mode and doesn't force the horse to come out of it. He's not flooding. If he forced the horse to stick with him in the sympathetic mode, that would send the horse into distress or learned helplessness. So another thing to note here is that, predators usually don't retreat. Like if a tiger is chasing a horse, it's probably not going to back off. It's probably going to run until it either gets the horse or the horse gets away. So the distinction she makes here and several times throughout the video is that the reason that the horse sees you as an ally or a friend or a playmate or whatever is because you're retreating. And the horse is like, oh, okay, you're not actually a predator. You're just acting like one sometimes. That doesn't make any sense to me, frankly. And I could just be stupid, but that really doesn't make sense. So learned helplessness generally happens over a period of time because the animal has to learn that no matter what, their attempts will be futile, that regardless of what they do, they have no way out. So I don't really think that my point was to say that the horses are sent into learned helplessness, but it can happen in join up for sure. If the horse learns that any attempt to get away will be met with being forced to run, but they're also actively choosing to stay with the trainer to avoid. So, I mean, perhaps there's an argument there to be had that it's not actually learned helplessness if the horse is actively choosing to avoid the situation. Yeah, I guess by definition that's probably right then. Sorry, argued that. So hanging on to the horse is not the only alternative, which is what she says. Like, if he forced the horse to stay because the horse wants to be in flight mode, so he's forcing the horse to stay, would be flooding. And that's not the only alternative here. You don't have to either hang on to the horse or send it around the arena. You could just let the horse go and see what it does, or you could not do it at all and just work with it through either positive reinforcement or just hanging out in their pasture and letting them get habituated to you. There are tons of different things you could do to prove that you're an ally without approaching the horse, or more accurately, antagonizing it. So she says, I look like a oh my God, I look like a threat, but I'm not. So it's not dominance theory at all. To which I say it doesn't sound like it because of semantics and word choice, but it is still the idea that the horse needs a leader, which stems from dominance theory. It's the idea that the horse needs you to tell it what to do, and the horse needs to pay attention to you and focus on you with the ear thing, for instance. He wants the horse's ear on you. He's looking for signs of submission and that the horse wants to be with him because he is the leader. He's not giving the horse a choice to be away from him. It looks like it because he doesn't have ropes on it, but you have to understand that aversives are not solely limited to pain. Like, people can yell at you or give you a threat and say, do this or else. And those are aversives. And that's not force-free just because nobody's hurting you or touching you. And also, the horse is trapped in the arena. It can't leave. It doesn't have the option. And I would be willing to bet if you had a much larger space, the horse would not do this circle and stay with him. The horse would get away from him. It's not learning that he is an ally. It's learning how to avoid being antagonized. I'm trying to avoid chased because apparently not everyone has a similar definition. So anyway, she says he's not trying to say that the only way you can be with me is if you settle down. He's saying I look like a predator, but I'm not. Again, I disagree for reasons I've stated previously, but I'm also not saying that he's saying the only way you can be with me is if you settle down. I'm saying that he is his actions and his behaviors tell the horse, the only way I will stop aggressing towards you is if you start showing behaviors I deem submissive. There is an important distinction there, because the way she phrases it, by saying he's not trying to say that the only way the horse can be with me is if you settle down, implies that the horse wants to be with you in the first place. In this scenario, the horse does not want to be with you. It is trying to get away from you, but it is in a very small, round arena. So, and the next points she makes are about the criteria that he looks for. He looks for licking and chewing, turning an ear, lowering the head, and smaller circle. She says that none of these behaviors are displacement behaviors like Jill says they are. They are the horse thinking. It is the horse saying, okay, I thought this was a threat. It's not a threat. So what is this? Let me investigate it. So once he sees that, he'll turn his shoulders at a 45-degree angle. Predators don't do that, and horses do it to each other in the herd. So that's a bit to unpack there, but it's frustrating. He's using a calming signal to tell the horse to come to him. He is lowering his body. He is saying, I am no longer a threat, with his body posture, by relaxing, turning his body away from the horse. And through all of this, the horse has been gradually being reinforced that when that if the horse doesn't stick close to him, that he's going to aggress. So the horse has a few options when he does that. The horse can either keep running around the circle, or it can do what its reinforcement history would suggest that it does, which is get close to the trainer. So it's frustrating, because licking and chewing, turning an ear, lowering the head, and a smaller circle are calming signals, and displacement behaviors, which a displacement behavior, the example that Rachel Dreisman gives, I think is really good. She says that if you were to walk into a bus stop and there's a dude standing there, you know exactly where you're going. You've been on this bus before. It's your regular route. But there's a dude there. Maybe you're a little, like, I don't know, maybe he's leering and he's being kind of weird. And so you look at the bus map, like look at the schedule to see what's going on. That's a displacement behavior. You don't need to look at the bus schedule. You don't need it in the moment. It's kind of like when horses dive for grass. They don't need it in the moment, but it could be a displacement behavior, and it is entirely dependent on context. I'm not saying every time a horse lowers its head, licks and chews, puts an ear on you, or creates a smaller circle that it is a displacement or calming signal. I am saying it depends on the context, and in the context when a horse is being chased and reinforced for calming down and giving calming signals to the trainer, then yeah, it's probably going to be a calming signal. Like, I have studied this for a reason, because that is what makes sense, and that is what little evidence we have, as well as my own anecdotal experience that is not relevant, so I have not mentioned it. That is what it's just what it points to. It's not this idea that the horse is thinking, oh, I thought they were a threat. They're not a threat, so let me come up to them. Because a horse that's investigating, they usually sniff, their ears are perked, their eyes are bright, and they're maybe a little bit cautious, and they're like, ooh, what is that? None of the horses in Monty Roberts' videos are exhibiting those behaviors. So I would be willing to go to bat for the fact that those horses are not investigating him. It is due to their reinforcement history, because they're not displaying the behaviors characteristic to an investigative horse. So, fine. Anyway, let me see. His criteria for reinforcement are those four: the licking, chewing, turning ear, lower head, and smaller circle. So he is looking for those, and perhaps unbeknownst to him, reinforcing those behaviors when he sees them. They're likely calming signals. I have no way of knowing. I cannot ask the horse, but given my experience with horses and the studies that I have done exclusive to horses, would indicate that that's probably the most probable explanation for what's going on, rather than the horse recognizing that this is a friend now. So she has no evidence to support what the horse is thinking, and at least Dreisma attempted something, even if you're going to say it's not a valid study because she didn't have all the criteria that a regular research methods course would recommend that you have. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's completely invalid, at least in my book. I think that Raquel Dreisma did as much studying as was probably necessary, and I think the study is definitely valid, and I think in the next couple of years we'll see a lot more information come out about that. But no, I cannot definitively say that this is the most valid study in the world. Rarely they ever are. Most studies have a ton of restrictions on them, because it's very hard to cover all your bases in studies like that, especially one that's more of a review rather than an actual, like, you're manipulating variables in a laboratory experiment. Okay, so the video creator then says she's not trying to speak like a horse in the same sentence that she says he's turning his shoulder and inviting the horse in because the horse understands that. You are communicating to the horse in a way that the horse understands. Yes, you are quote unquote speaking to the horse. And she says that's not what's happening. Again, semantics. I don't know exactly what she meant by that, but I think it's worth pointing out. Why does the horse need to have an ear on him? That's something to consider. When horses are not threatened by something any longer, their ears find a neutral resting position. They're normally out to the side or kind of like, tilted forward. They're not pointed directly at something. You could argue interest, but why is the horse interested? This comes from the dominance theory that the horse is listening and focused on you. And generally speaking, if the ear is not on you, the horse doesn't care about you. Or because Monty Roberts says that the ear indicates that he is important in the horse's life. Which, think about that for a second. But why would the horse need you to be important? His buddies are probably important to him. Food and water and shelter is probably important to him. But he doesn't have his ear on those things all the time. It's that concept that horses, you must command their attention and you must command their respect. Even if he's not explicitly saying it, that's where that school of thought comes from, and that's where you get looking for behaviors like that. You're looking for submission and having the horse's sole focus be you. So she then moves on to say that the horse will walk up to him, and it has absolutely nothing to do with his reinforcement history or the fact that the horse has learned throughout this process that when Roberts backs away, he is to come closer, and he gets reinforced by there being no aggression or increased pressure on the horse, that coming closer off the rail is the answer. Roberts wants the horse to be closer to him, and he's reinforcing that behavior, whether he knows it or not. I mean, you can't argue the man is good at reading horses. It's just the way he explains it is not scientific. It's based in dominance theory, whether he knows that or not, but the language he uses and the explanations he uses are based in dominance theory, that the horse is respecting him and trusting him and is now becoming a friend and an ally, when that's not how I make friends with horses. That's not the only way to make friends with horses. And also, it's arguable, given the Zen horse, that's not how you make friends with horses. They're still afraid. You haven't proven to them that you're not going to do anything bad to them. If anything, you've said, I'm going to do bad things, or things that at the very least you don't find entirely pleasant, but if you do what I would like you to do, then that will stop. So of course the horse is going to walk up to him, obviously. He learns that, being near the trainer equals no escalation. She then says, Jill says he's chasing and threatening the horse and that they're only with him to get him to stop, and if that's how people are doing it, they aren't doing it the Monty Roberts way. Again, I have to say, chasing is not just running. That is not my definition. I mean, I did not look it up on Webster, but chasing to me, especially in a small space, is, you're angling your body towards the horse's hind end and making aggressive motions towards it, even if you don't have to run after it the entire time. Negative reinforcement in general has an inherent threat. It's unavoidable. And I'm not saying that I hate negative reinforcement or it's this really awful thing. We all deal with it every day in our lives. It is unrealistic, in my opinion, to expect that you could give an animal, unless you had very specific circumstances, a life with absolutely no negative reinforcement. However, there's some debate on whether or not you should use it to train the horses. And that's where we bring in the humane hierarchy, but that's not what this episode is about. But it has an inherent threat, because most people, when we ride, you get on a horse, and when you ask it to go forward, you put your leg on. And what happens if the horse doesn't move forward? Do you hold that same pressure, or do you release and think, why is the horse not doing it? How can I make this clearer? Let's try training it another way. Most people put their leg on harder. And then gradually the horse learns that he should probably move when you put your leg on the first time to avoid the increase. That's how negative reinforcement works. Whether you like it or not, there is usually an inherent threat unless you only use non-escalating negative reinforcement, which would be that you just keep your leg on until the horse moves forward and then you release. And most people don't ride like that. So fine, it's okay. I'm not saying it's evil or the worst thing in the world, but there is a threat. And to say that, the horse isn't running away because it wants Roberts to, or is running away, stops running away because it wants Roberts to stop, and saying that it's also negative reinforcement, that doesn't make sense. And I think Join Up wants to have this idea that you're communicating with the horse in a way that they understand, and that is by helping them find their flight zone and then teaching them that I'm a predator, but I'm actually not what you think. I'm your ally, and then we build this trust and this bond, and this horse wants to be with me. Those are great ideas. That is what we would all like. We would all like that to work like that. And it's a very powerful marketing technique, but it does not founded in science. It's just not. That's not reality. That horses are just like, oh yeah, okay, I'll start to trust you. Like, it just doesn't work like that. Reinforcement history is a much more likely explanation. And now I'm not saying that there is no difference or there's no other potential variables that are involved. I mean, some horses could be more trusting than others and they're willing to make that move. But at baseline, what we can support with science is reinforcement. And that is the most likely explanation for what is happening here. Not that the horse is recognizing that you're an ally, because you're proving that you're not by being threatening. Allies are not threatening. Okay, so anyway, that is how Monty Roberts uses it. I'm sorry. It's definitely a milder and more skilled form of it, 100%. But it's not, not chasing the horse. She says, otherwise he wouldn't wait on the horse. He never chases. So to that I say, the horse has two choices because it's trapped in a very small arena. It can either keep walking or walk up to the human. And basic learning theory means that through reinforcement, you increase behavior. So if you remember, the whole time Roberts works with a horse in the round pen, he is steadily reinforcing being close to him and communicating. He's asking the horse to communicate to him that it's not a threat. So the horse is going to keep doing that, and the horse will walk up to him because reinforcement history leads to behavior. So when the horse is trapped in this arena and it has two choices, when Robert stops and turns away from it, it can either keep walking or walk up to him. It has a reinforcement history of walking up to the trainer, so that's what it's most likely to do. And if the horse doesn't walk up to the trainer or it doesn't move at all, he starts doing other things by moving around on the semicircle or inviting the horse in or walking up closer to it, etc., etc. So she says Monty Roberts' training is not dominance theory. He's an advocate for prevention of cruelty and force-free training and getting whips out of the racing industry. And that to call his methods bullshit is a big bridge to burn with someone who has like-minded interests. And to that I say I am not attacking Monty Roberts as a person, and I don't use ad hominems in arguments. I do not attack people for who they are and what they believe in. I attack methodology, and that's what this is. This method, it isn't what it says it is. And he is very good at communicating, and I'm sure he believes it wholeheartedly, the join-up method, and that the horse wants to run and wants to be with him at the end. But the horse's behavior doesn't support it. It's a beautiful narrative. It's the same reason that people, inject horses and they're and then they keep them competing at a similar level. And that is not, this isn't necessarily, every situation is different, but in general, okay, for instance, let's take nerving. A lot of people want to jump their horses and say that the horse needs a nerving surgery in order to keep jumping. Then a lot of times the narrative that people say is, well, we had to do everything we could because this horse loves jumping so much that we had to get it back jumping, and that was the only way to do it. The horse would have been miserable giving up his jumping career. Says who? And also, it's a way to justify your own behavior. The horse is not begging you to keep jumping. If left to his own devices, it's probably just going to chill in a field and consume food and hang out with his buddies. That's what they're designed to do. Yes, some horses are bred to jump, but that doesn't mean that they need a nerving surgery so that they can keep doing what they want to do, allegedly. It's the same situation. It just makes it easier to digest and keep doing something that is maybe not the best thing to do. And I'm not saying that join up is this most cruel, awful, evil thing in the world. Obviously, there are far worse things. But it's still not a force-free approach that is necessarily humane. You are forcing the horse to make a decision, and it has no choice but to be with you. Otherwise, you wouldn't do join up at all. You would give it a genuine choice, and you would teach it through other methods that you are not a predator, or a threat is a more accurate way of saying it, because you're a predator at baseline. But you're not a threat to them, and the only way to do that is not through join up. There are many other avenues that one could take. So, and it is dominance theory. That is the whole point, is to get the horse to follow and accept you as leader. So I do disagree. Join up is force-free, but I don't disagree with, advocating for cruelty-free and force-free training. I think that's fantastic, and I love that he's doing that. But that doesn't mean that everything he does is cruelty-free or force-free. Me neither. I mean, there have been instances since I've switched to positive reinforcement that the circumstance called for something that I was more than uncomfortable with ethically, morally, and at a cognizant level, but there was nothing I could do to prevent, danger or somebody getting hurt without being aggressive or cruel or using force with a horse. It's not ideal, but you don't have to use it all the time to train, and that is the distinction. But to say it's not dominance theory is just to ignore reality. But again, I say his methods are bullshit, and that might have been too blunt, and I will agree that if somebody called my methods bullshit, I would be offended, so I totally hear that. And I really have to be more careful about what I say in jest and, for entertainment value and to get a few laughs. It's not cool, and it's offensive. So I hear you on that 100%. However, that doesn't mean that I don't have people in my life that think that what I do is absolute bullshit. When I first started training with positive reinforcement and I wanted to do it with my dog, my dad, the way he trained on the police force when he was a police officer many, many years ago, They did it very traditionally using choke and shock collars. And so when I got my dog and I was talking about positive reinforcement, he was like, that's ridiculous. You can't do that. It doesn't work. It's not founded in reality, blah, blah, blah. And I was like, okay, I'm going to do it anyway, though. And I did. And I wasn't perfect. And there were circumstances that I definitely did use force with her. But it was only ever to keep her safe or keep something else safe. It was never as a training tool like it is traditionally. So, I have people all over my life, especially with the horse thing, because it is most common still. The dog industry has predominantly changed to positive reinforcement, but the horse industry will probably not change entirely, maybe ever, because of competition, because it's very difficult to get a horse to do the things that we want them to do without some sort of negative reinforcement, which is fine, but I think it has a ceiling. But I have friends that disagree with what I do, and I have, in so many words, been like, all right, dude, this is another one of your kicks. Stupid. You're kind of just living in the clouds. You're not paying attention to reality, blah, blah, blah. And, I'm sure they're thinking that it is bullshit, but they don't say it to my face, or they don't say it in such a way, or they just don't adopt it and just are like, okay, yeah, Jill, you're doing that thing, whatever floats your boat. All right, I'm going to go back to doing the normal thing. Or dismissing everything I'm saying. They don't have to explicitly say it. But we're still friends. It doesn't mean I hate them as people. It doesn't mean they hate me as people. You can disagree with somebody or think what they're doing is bullshit or not founded in reality and still be friends. So, it's not, I don't know. I haven't talked to Monty Roberts. I don't know him personally. But I am not burning a bridge with somebody who advocates for horse welfare. What I am saying is that I do not agree that his methods are force-free, not founded in dominance theory, and are necessary to help train a horse who is fearful of humans. I do not think that is true. I'm sorry. I don't know how else to say it, but it doesn't mean that I think Monty Roberts is the worst person in the world. Anyway, moving on, she talks about my studies that I cited, and she says, I have a doctorate, and we were taught an entire course on research. Just throwing it out there. So was I. Had to take research methods. And then she says, Kath Henshaw studies are bullshit, which is kind of an ironic thing to do, considering my last spiel. And she doesn't address any of the other studies I cited, of which there are 12. In both of my episodes between them, there are 12 resources that discuss dominance theory and why using fear tactics are not only not ethical, but also not force-free. And she just attacked Kath Henshaw's study, which, again, I did not have time to look at today, and I have about 30 minutes until I have to do a live Q&A, so I'm trying to kind of move it along here, and I might have to just wrap this up later, but we'll see. Then she goes on to talk about the displacement tactics that I'm talking about. So she said the 4 above, the head lowering, licking and chewing, etc., are displacement tactics according to Jill, which I said they could be displacement or calming, and most likely are based on the research that is out there, and from my perspective, that is what I believe. I don't think that they are the horse submitting, because I don't believe in dominance theory. And science on dominance theory would suggest that that is the case. But she did not review any of those studies and only focused on the one that has a flaw, which is the Henshaw study, which is the one where they positively reinforced the horses before working with them and then did not discuss any of the after effects and just said it was completely invalid because they use positive reinforcement, which I would argue that, like, if that is the case, sure. So anyway, sometimes, sorry, I skipped to where I was. She said, I guess that could be true if the horse is being chased, but which is not how Monty Roberts trained, so that's not the people you should be looking at. To which I say some methods evolve, like the meaning of passive-aggressive, as I stated earlier. It changed from what it used to mean to what it means now, which are two different meanings. Passive-aggressive tends to mean now just being aggressive in language. Me calling dominance theory bullshit or is just blatantly being passive-aggressive, or, is blatantly being aggressive. But like what I do with negative reinforcement, where I say it's not my favorite way to train, it's not how I prefer, I think you should find other methods to train before resorting to that. It's not me being passive-aggressive, that's my opinion. I'm not trying to tell anyone or avoiding conflict or anything like that. That's just how I feel. I'm not trying to shame anybody. And again, like if I have before, I genuinely apologize. That's not my intent, but I can't help that my opinion is that I don't agree with it. I can't say, yes, negative reinforcement is fine. It's my favorite way to train. I love it, but I do positive reinforcement instead. That doesn't make any sense. So obviously I'm going to think that one is better over the other, just like most people that train with negative reinforcement think it's better than positive. So there's no problem with that. So some methods, like the meaning of passive aggressive, evolved beyond their origins. So join up has evolved beyond its origins, and that is why in my description of episode 31 I did not capitalize join up, because join up copyright is Monty Roberts and join up period is the round pinning method, and I could have used those two interchangeably, I guess. So it's also 100% how he trains. He just uses better, nicer sounding euphemistic words and isn't overtly aggressive. He's not running at the horse or swinging a whip or a bag at it like maybe Clinton Anderson or some of the more aggressive type trainers would, but he's still achieving the same effect, which is scaring the horse into moving. She said she'd link a study where a Dr. Fowler says head lowering plus licking and chewing isn't displacement behavior because the stress is going on whether or not the horse is on the rail or joined up. So if it were a displacement tactic, it would only happen while a stressor is applied, not also while taken away. So context, hi. Context is everything. Like the horse can lower its head and chew, or lick and chew, if it's a displacement behavior while the stress is going on, because like I said earlier, you can be in distress and be worried about what's happening and also trying to make the situation less bad. Think of an example where perhaps you have an armed assailant pointing a weapon at you and you're under severe duress. That is a very stressful situation. It is life or death. And you're like, I have a family, please don't shoot me. You are utilizing your stress to try and make the situation not so bad. You can't, like the idea that you can't be productive or trying to make a situation better while under distress that doesn't make any sense, because people and horses and cats and dogs do it all the time. They are not mutually exclusive. You can do both. And it's also to say that, like, it's the same thing of saying, like, the yawning behavior only happens because the horse is relaxed and releasing tension. It can also happen because the horse is tired. It depends on context. It's so important. And every person that is a behavior analyst, even me, who is a novice behavioral analyst, that is the first thing you learn is environment and context have everything to do with it. And to say that if it were a displacement tactic, it would only happen while the stressor is applied, not while taken away. No. Says who? And I couldn't review the study because, despite saying she would link it, she did not. The whole point of a displacement behavior, or a calming signal is to lower tension. either within yourself or within your aggressor or the thing that is frightening you. And horses will do it to like plastic bags, or a cone or something they're suspicious of. If it's in the center of the arena, they might do a curve or look away and then look back, or signal to it that they're not a threat because they don't know and they can only communicate within their own behavioral repertoire. So to say that it can only happen in one circumstance and not another is unfortunate. But I can't review the study because they didn't actually link it. And so the whole point of using a displacement or more likely calming signal, I think is what she's talking about, because head lowering and licking and chewing are usually calming signals, not displacement behaviors. So either we have different definitions of displacement behaviors, or she's confusing it with calming signal. Either way, they are calming signals. The horse is asking within its own repertoire and how it knows to communicate with anything else that it would like for the situation to de-escalate. She says if the horse was in learned helplessness, join up would never happen again. But to that, I say horses in pain jump anyway because they are trying to avoid the situation. And again, like I talked earlier about how like if the horse is still actively making a choice, and it's probably not learned helplessness, but it could also be conditioned suppression where the animal learns that no matter what it does, its opinions or outbursts or attempts at not performing the behavior will be met with punishment or something far more adversive than just doing the thing itself. So in the case of a horse that maybe has a painful foot, and when it refuses, it's saying, hey, my foot hurts, I don't want to jump. But the rider is bigger and louder and hits the horse and is scarier and more painful than the foot, then the horse might jump to avoid that pain. And the same thing could happen in join up. So the horse doesn't want, and I mean, I would argue, yeah, it's probably not learned helplessness, but it could still be something in that realm or headed that direction. If the horse is like, okay, well, if I don't do this thing that it clearly wants me to do, then I'm going to get or face pain. So she said, this is what bugs me about people who do positive reinforcement, always talking about learned helplessness. She says there's like this cartoon where this pony is being like, finger painted on and whatever, and another horse is like, go to your happy place. She says it's offensive to horses in general because, and prefaces with this being anecdotal, that horses have a sixth sense when it comes to people who have an innocence about them. She speaks to an anecdote where a kid could touch a horse who was ear shy because the horse and the horse would relax, where he wouldn't with any other handlers. I agree that horses aren't just behaviorist robots, but I think if we're sticking to fact and science, which has been this conversation and her critique of my previous conversation, that it's more likely that the kid doesn't signal like other people. It's more likely that the handler that ear twitched this horse and gave it kind of that PTSD reaction about it was standing and approached it probably very similarly to how these handlers do. But a kid with a disability in a wheelchair, as she states in her video, does not look anything like a person walking up to it, on their 2 feet. So the cues are different, the context is different, so the horse might have a different reaction. It's kind of the same thing where when you are training a horse, say like Zoe with her hip targeting. Brilliant, wonderful, offers it all the time in her paddock. When I come to the cross ties, sometimes she's a little bit stickier because I haven't been taking her out very much lately, but she isn't as likely to offer that behavior or do it when I cue. It takes her a second because the environmental cues are not the same. So in the situation with this kid that's in a wheelchair, he might have a different reaction from the horse because he's not being grouped by the horse or generalized into the group like the handlers are, because he doesn't look like the person that ear twitched him. It's hard for me to believe that the person that ear twitched this horse, presumably, as they say, was in a wheelchair. So, I could be totally wrong on that, but I think I have a higher probability of being right by saying that he was probably standing. So when a person approaches him with a halter or just walks up to him and starts rubbing his face, he's like, you're going to go for my ears. I don't trust that. And he's worried about his ears, and there is history there. But the kid that either doesn't have a halter or does, and is in a wheelchair and has never had a history of ear twitching, it gives this horse a cue that it's going to be different. Same thing happens with Zoe. When I walk into her field without a treat pouch, she doesn't start offering behaviors anymore because they are so good at reading context. She knows if I have my bum bag on full of treats that we're going to have a training session. If not, there's no training session. They know context. So if there is a chair, no ear twitching. If there isn't a chair, possibility of ear twitching. I mean, I'm obviously going out on a limb here. I don't know this horse, but that seems more likely than where she goes on to say that the horses just know that they have a connection with innocence, which is a wonderful thing to believe and could entirely be possible. But if we are sticking to science and fact and likely explanation through behavior analysis, that is my explanation is the more likely one. And feel free to offer more. I mean, like, I don't think that saying the horse just likes this kid is the more accurate way of saying it. The horse just probably hasn't had an experience that triggers that reaction from that stimulus. So it's all about antecedent arrangement. And she said it's not learned helplessness, which is not, like, she keeps providing examples that aren't really, they don't line up. Like, they're not relevant to the point. Like, I would never say that a horse that puts his head down for a kid in a wheelchair is learned helplessness. That is not the same thing as, say, maybe somebody who runs around chasing the horse until the horse gives up and they shove a halter on it and it stops fighting. That would be learned helplessness. So, I mean, it's the same point she made with that, the horse's reactions in massaging. You get the same behavioral presentations in join up, that those emotions must be the same as well. No, that says who? Typically, from what we know about human and animal emotions, is that they can present themselves differently in different situations, and behaviors are the same way. We know this as well. A dog that is biting out of fear or out of pain, it's the same behavior, different reason, and different cause usually. So a horse that keeps fighting ear handling, by definition, is not in learned helplessness. A horse can relax or be in learned helplessness, and they look very similar, but it entirely depends on context. If a horse who has kept fighting during ear handling, as she says the horse did for handlers, not the child, that I would say that was learned helplessness, and it's not. Sorry, burped. It wouldn't be a Jill podcast without a burp. I'm so professional. Okay. She said horses are not just going to go into learned helplessness because they're doing activities they might not enjoy. And again, did not say that. Did not imply that. Did not mean to. No, I understand learned helplessness, and that is not what that means. Okay, so her conclusion says, I'm tired of listening to someone with a large and very young, impressionable following say that some of these methods are unethical when they are not. You shouldn't be shamed for using these methods when you're using them in the correct way. And I have to say, if you are not doing what I'm describing, why are you upset? I mean, I guess because I'm portraying it under the umbrella of Monty Roberts training, but if you're not the one chasing the horse with whips and spurs and being overly or aggressive, period, if you don't believe you're being aggressive towards your horse, why are you upset at me? Because if that's not what you're doing, and that's not what the people who you look up to and reference for training are doing, why are you being defensive about it? And so, number one, I am predominantly talking about people who do it the worst way. So in my podcast episode, I do frequently reference like using bags and whips and flags and stuff to get the horse to go forward. And two, Monty Roberts is not innocent. He definitely throws the lead rope and uses aggressive body language to make the horse go forward when the horse otherwise would not. That is using force. Even though he's not touching the horse, he is still forcing it to do something. He's not giving the horse the option to just not do anything, to leave, not interact, not run, or even react normally. So, the horse might choose to run on its own, and it might not. And, I mean, I get it. I get it. When somebody who has a large following is shitting on what you're doing, it doesn't feel great. And I probably attacked it in a way that was overly aggressive, and I definitely just kind of slipped into trying to be more entertaining and outlandish than, just trying to be diplomatic, because to some extent that's my own shortcoming, where I'm just so tired of trying to wrap everything up with a nice, neat little bow and not being offensive or not and worrying so much about everyone else's feelings. And I guess it's not time to let go of that, and maybe it's not ever the time, but I don't know. I definitely was overzealous, I will admit, but like at the same time, it sucks when people are not agreeing with you on a public level, but that doesn't mean those people are, wrong. I mean, like when I first switched to positive reinforcement, a lot of my fellow larger creators that used to be my friend at one point, when I posted about it, everyone started asking those creators, when are you doing positive reinforcement? Do you use it? Blah, blah, blah. And all of those creators were like, no, fuck that. I don't know. It's unnecessary. And other trainers shouldn't be shaming you into doing it. And it doesn't feel great when other people that are larger than you put down what you believe in. But at the same time, those trainers were doing what they thought was best, and A, trying to protect their business, and B, also they didn't want to have to change. A lot of them have, and even if they didn't use positive reinforcement all the way, and neither do I changed from doing that as well. But chasing a horse around an arena and not giving it a choice is not using autonomous force-free training. And I'm not saying that all the time you can't use force, but claiming that it is not. And using fear is not ethical. It's not a humane way to train. And that is what join up does, whether you are chasing the horse at a full sprint behind it or you're aggressing in the way that Roberts does. Horses would not be flinching or running away from you if they were not afraid when they otherwise are standing still. So, I don't know. Anyway, she also says it's offensive that I put the Kardashians on the same level as the Queen and that I haven't done my research and I don't know anything about the Queen's expertise in terms of riding. But the point was not about who rides better and that the Kardashians know just as much as the Queen. That wasn't my point. My point was to say that just because they are rich and famous or big and popular does not mean that they know best. That was my point in saying that. And I'm sorry if that was a little unclear. I know I tangented about the posts and Twitter and stuff, but the point was you can't just accept that because the Queen does it, I should do it too. She must know best. She has all the money. Usually those people aren't super experienced. And in truth, I do not know about the Queen's riding experience, but I am highly suspicious that she probably heard about Monty Roberts and his join-up methods and said, hey, I've got a horse or a difficult one, or here, come train my horses, you famous individual. We want the best of the best, and you look like it. So, it wasn't a comment on either's horsemanship experience, nor was it meant to offend the Queen. Apologies, that wasn't my intention, but it was to make a point that just because they are wealthy or powerful does not mean that they know what's best. So anyway, she wraps up her video by doing a join-up session. She says she's never done it with this horse before, and she's going to give it a go, and if she does it right, he will join up with her. So she shows that she just has a cotton lead rope and says, I don't have a whip or a bag or anything like that, as if that is somehow better. I guess in some respects, yes, but a whip can be gentler than a cotton lead depending on how it's used. But she begins by swinging the rope side to side in front of her to make him move away, or else he'll get hit by the lead, so he doesn't have a choice. I guess he has a choice technically. He can either stand there and get hit by the lead, which I don't think is her goal, but that is why he moves away. He doesn't move away because he wants to, or he's in flight mode, I don't see any other explanation other than he doesn't want to get hit by the lead, and that's what's motivating him to move off. And then, when he moves off, she releases the pressure. But the video cuts, so I don't know what happened or how that progressed. And then in the next clip, she is throwing the rope at his haunches, saying, this is the most aggressive thing Monty Roberts ever does. But her body language is very, very different than what Monty Roberts does. She just kind of leans and tosses, and the horse doesn't move, really. That could be explained by the horse knows her, and that's why he's not responding, and she has to get a little bit more aggressive in the next cut. She's swinging the rope in a big circle rather than just tossing it at his haunches because, it looks to me like she doesn't want to hurt the horse. That's not the point. She's not trying to whip him to make him go forward, but it didn't work because she didn't have the aggressive body language, and therefore it wasn't really motivating to the horse to go forward. And again, this is what everything hinges on. The behavior is contingent on motivation. Behavior always has a cause, and if the horse is not motivated or threatened by the rope moving or being thrown at him, he's not going to move forward. The only reason he would move forward would be to avoid that happening again. It's not for trust or bond. That is not a scientific explanation for why the horse would move off of that. So I'm not saying that it's inherently bad to use pressure or to lunge or throw rope at the horse or anything like that, but that's what it is. And I don't think there should be a reason to be like, oh, well, no, it's not, it's tossing. Like, okay, semantics, let's play that game. But anyway, so she also clucks to the horse to keep him moving forward, which presumably she has clucked to this horse before, and he knows that means to go forward. So not entirely sticking to one variable there, but she also blocks his shoulder by walking parallel. So she's telling him to stay out on the circle. And so then the video cuts again. She's swinging the rope in a circle while smooching. And then she turns away from the horse and he slowly walks up to her. And then he sighs and licks and chews. And she goes, "Really? Is this stress and force? Really?" In that voice, because she's making fun of me and mocking my idea, implying that it's ridiculous, which is mature. But anyway, so, I mean, like, cool. I'm glad that your horse is not, overtly stressed out. That's kind of the goal of training. That's my goal anyway. But I mean, call it what you want. To me, that would be because the horse is relaxing. He's no longer having to move and trot around in a circle and have a rope slung at him and lots of clucking and lots of your energy being directed at him. Not giving him a choice, because in this case, with this horse, if there were no pressure applied, the horse would stand still. So you're not giving him a choice. You are making him go forward. And I guess you could argue that it's still a choice because he could just stand there. But the alternative is to have you escalate the pressure, where we see her start swinging the rope in a circle and clucking and giving the horse more cues, like, you better go forward. And, obviously I don't know what happens in between those cuts. So I can't speak to that. I can only see that she does like 3 very short clips, so it's not a full join-up session. And yeah, so I mean, I don't know what's happening really, but yeah, I don't know. I just whatever. The horse is moving because there's an or else implied. Otherwise, he would just stand there. So you're not giving him a choice. And to say that it is force-free is ignorant, because there is force involved if we are all on the same definition of force. It's not really a choice if you get to choose comfort or discomfort. There's no option there. Every species is going to choose comfort every time. Again, she talks about that this horse, is her personal horse. She's never done it before. And she says Monty Roberts' methods are predominantly used for horses that are wild or not, they don't have very good associations with people. So if he's not in flight mode, why do it? Because by her logic, wouldn't the horse just stay with her at all times if he knows that she's an ally because they already have a relationship? Because the whole point that she makes in her video about why you do join up is to prove to the horse that you're not a predator, but you're an ally, by showing the horse that you're a different type of predator, that you retreat, unlike natural predators. And so, which is a really it sounds more like a justification than something that is accurate. And it also sounds like there is no evidence to support that, because how would you know how the horse is perceiving you other than the way that it naturally perceives you, which is as a predator? So by her logic, the horse, if it knows that you're a friend and an ally, it joins up and it follows you. That's the whole premise of join up, is that the horse is now bonded or trusting or respecting, depending on what trainer you ask. The language is different, but it's all the same principle, that the horse is following you now because you've won in one way or another, whether that's proving to the horse that you're not dangerous or proving to them that, you're dominant. Whatever, spectrum you come from, it's all the same thing, essentially. So why do join up if your horse already sees you as a friend and ally? And by that logic, he should also just follow you around. So why is that not happening? I mean, but yeah, so I think that about concludes my point, and I want to reiterate one more time that if you do happen to find the video, please do not send her hate. This is not the goal of this, despite, kind of the things she implies in her videos and posts, the frequent videos and posts she has made about me, that I am not trying to shame people into believing what I believe. I am an advocate for horse welfare, and if I think the particular method is wrong, then that is my right to voice it. But that doesn't mean that I hate the people that do it, or I think that they're stupid or ignorant, or, they're choosing to abuse their horses. That's not my prerogative at all. My prerogative is to teach people that there are other ways to do things, and we don't have to do them the way they've always been done, and blindly defend people or their methods because we like the people. I like Monty Roberts. He seems like an awesome guy. He's trying to do better for horses. But that doesn't mean that I have to agree with his methodology. I'm allowed to disagree and still like people and not hate on them. Like I said earlier in the podcast, I was probably a bit too, candid and like trying to make a joke by saying that it's bullshit. And I probably shouldn't have said that because that's not very sensitive. But I just really don't agree that the methods are based in science. I think they are based in dominance theory. Whether you say that you're trying to dominate your horse or not, these ideas are pervasive and they are subtle. You don't have to explicitly say you are trying to dominate your horse and show who's boss. You can say things like, look, the horse is looking for a leader. Those ideas stem from dominance theory. That's okay, but that's what it is. And it's not bad that it stems from dominance theory, but it's something that we can look at and be like, all right, we don't have to use that anymore. We can change things up or look for a new alternative. As Monty Roberts says, if I have to stick with tradition and I'm not allowed to grow and change, I don't want to be a part of it. I want to do my own thing, and I want to be allowed to evolve and adapt. And I think that's okay. And I agree with him in that regard. It's frustrating that there were so many personal attacks in that video, and just like commenting on my stuff, and which I have deleted them, by the way. I don't know if I've already said that or not, but I really don't want people to seek out her account and attack her. And if you do find it and you feel like you just absolutely must say your piece, please be cordial and civil, because that is not what I stand for. Everything that I advocate for is for the mental health of people and the mental health and welfare of horses, and attacking people is not what I agree with. And I know that I get a little bit heated and passionate about what I'm talking about, and but it's important to remember that I disagree with beliefs and often actions, but not the existence of a person or who they are. It is not a comment on their character or an attack for who they are personally. I don't use ad hominems in arguments. I'm strictly talking about this belief. To me, join up and believing in it does not make sense. And you can attack all of the studies that are done on it, and fine, maybe they're not the most valid studies in the world, but the basis on dominance theory doesn't make sense, and also, or on join up, doesn't make sense, and is also, it stems from dominance theory, which has been debunked multiple times by multiple different studies on multiple different species. It's not applicable. And so, I don't know. It's just, and to argue that it's completely force-free and that I am somehow doing a disservice to the equestrian world by saying that perfectly ethical, humane, and force-free training methods are not, and shaming people is irresponsible. And I think I'm doing the exact opposite, actually. But also, like I said earlier, it's irritating that, if I'm not describing what you do, then I don't understand why there's so much frustration around what I'm saying. But I don't know. And also, it seems like an odd thing to do to advocate so hard and start an argument and post harassing videos, frankly, online. Cool, I'm open for discussion, but you could have sent me a message and we could have talked about it, but all right. But I don't get that, especially for something that you don't even do, and also have not properly studied. And by properly studied, I mean work with horses for a living. Most of the people that have done the studies that I used to back what I said, but that's okay. Everybody is entitled to their opinion, and you can have an opinion without it being based in science. And, I apologize if it was misleading for me to say that it was backed by science. When I made my episode, I genuinely thought that I was on the right track with the join-up ones. Now, the dominance theory ones, I will not go back on those. Those are definitely based in science, but I don't know. I would have to look harder at the join-up studies and make sure, if I actually still agree with them or not, or if I think that they're too restrictive to really pull any I guess conclusive data from. But my point is, regardless, study or no study, it's not force-free. It doesn't make sense from an ethological perspective, and it is using the horse's prey animal aspect in order to gain control over it. And it does not produce a horse that loves you and respects you. It produces a horse that is afraid of your or else. And I mean, like, you can watch the videos that I discussed. I don't really feel comfortable linking them, but the ones that I talked about, again, just if you're interested in watching them, pretty much you can just Google Monty Roberts. But one is titled Monty Roberts Explains Join Up with Equus the Horse, and the other one is New Hollywood Zane, Willing Partner. So, I mean, you can look at those and watch them. That Hollywood Zane video, the join up part is really interesting because the horse doesn't want to walk up to him, and he starts doing this arc, and at one point the horse visibly flinches, like I talked about earlier, and that is highly indicative to me that the horse is not super comfortable and calm. But anyway, I mean, obviously that's just one example, but I mean, I don't see how acting like a predator and making big scary noises and throwing things at the animal is going to produce a friend or prove to them that you're not scary. If anything, you're confirming their original fears. You're not giving them a choice, because in the instance of her personal horse that she uses in the video and the horses that Monty Roberts use, often he doesn't turn them loose and they just start galloping around the arena. I mean, in most of the videos that I have watched, that is not what I see. So, I mean, it's up to you to decide. And if you still like join up, go you. Like, that is totally okay. I don't think you're a terrible, shitty person. But acknowledge that it is what it is. It is based in dominance theory. It's negative reinforcement, and it's not force-free. That doesn't make it inherently bad. None of those things do. Sometimes you have to use force, and sometimes you have to use negative reinforcement. But as a predominant training method, I try to avoid that, but that is just how I train. That doesn't mean that's how you have to train, or I look down on you if you do it any other way. I am here to provide an alternative explanation and way to go about things. If you want to keep doing what you've always done, you go right ahead. Nobody's going to shit on you because you're probably in the majority anyway. So, I mean, I don't know. Again, really not trying to attack this individual. I know that they are just trying to do what they think is right, and that's okay. But this is probably the last time I'm going to talk about it. Should there be another retaliation video, frankly, I don't have time. My classes start today, and so I will have 3 master's classes, and I actually had to put off a video that I was supposed to have edited and uploaded today to do this episode. And so anyway, I thought I was also going to have it up today, but then I had stuff to do yesterday. I had a live stream and an interview for a podcast, and so I've gotten super behind on everything trying to get this done, because obviously it's a 2.5-hour episode. It's so much. And, I'm not complaining. I feel like this needed to be said. I feel like there were a lot of people that probably had a similar stance, and that's okay. And I'm glad that I had the opportunity to address it, but I am not really interested in engaging in internet drama, especially with people who are being kind of blatantly calling me out and attacking me as a person in subtle ways, but still, it's not my favorite thing in the world. And also, some people, if you just don't want to change your opinion, there's really no point in engaging in an argument, because if you're just arguing with me because you want me to agree with you, that's not how I choose to enter arguments. I usually enter them because I want to help educate and understand their side. And I think I learned a lot, because this made me delve even further into the topic of join up, and I still stand where I stand. But at the same time, she picked a fight because, she said I was wrong, and that's okay. I mean, cool, let's do it. But I don't know. The way it was handled felt a little bit petty. But I have also been known to be petty before, so I can't really say anything. And I'm not perfect, and I make mistakes. And if I have offended anybody or hurt anybody's feelings, that is really not my goal with this podcast. The entire point is to help make the horse industry a better place for horses and for people. So, I mean, my goal is never to shame or make anybody feel bad. So I apologize, and I hope that we're all on the same page now. At least you understand where I'm coming from. Even if you don't entirely agree with me, that is A-okay. But yeah, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up here. Be sure to check us out at Jet EquiTheory on Instagram, YouTube, Twitter, and Facebook. And the podcast will be getting its new name. The next episode will be about that. I think I'm leaning towards, it's either Psyquestrian or EquiTheory. We'll see. But one of those places, and then the Instagram and Facebook pages will likely match that. So just brace for impact on that change. And with that said, I think I'm going to go ahead and wrap it up. All right. Have a good one, guys. And please take care of yourselves and don't be mean to people. And if you get into an argument, try and keep your cool and, try to learn something. I definitely learned a lot from this, and I at least thank her for the opportunity of bringing it to my attention that this is not an uncommon belief. So I hope I handled it well, and you guys don't think I'm a total idiot. So anyway, I'm going to end it. Thank you, guys. Have a good one.